Let's call the meeting to order. Dee, can you start the roll call?
Wait, we got you on.
Sorry, that was me.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, roll call. Suresh is not here. Peggy Briggs?
Present.
Thank you. Kathy Kukalo? Not here. Eric Dahlberg?
Present.
John Garofalo's not here. Greg Gariello is not here. Amrit Kumar is not here. Don Kupka?
Present.
Thank you.
Zoom.
Lindsay List?
Present.
Dee Ortner? Here. Carlin Reed?
Here.
Oh, Parashar Patel?
Here.
Pressure.
Christine
We're not doing a
Reynolds?
webinar.
Here.
Quasi
Doesn't look like a
Sadusman?
webinar.
Quasi's here.
Quasi, good to see you.
Timing,
And
What do you mean? Oh, in terms of,
Right, for promoting the people to be able to speak.
Oh, yeah, we have different rules now.
I think you can.
He can, okay.
we have a quorum.
Thank you.
You can promote folks if you have to, right?
That's what I'm doing.
Oh, okay, all right.
perfect.
That's, I was just checking.
Okay.
And
All right. So, sorry?
Want the agenda? Agenda?
Yeah, throw up the agenda. We just did item number 1, call to order. We're on to item number 2, which is public comment. Do we have anyone from the public would like to comment? Come on up, Tracy.
Hello. Good to see everybody. Tracy Morano, Chair of the Regional School Committee, speaking on behalf of myself. It's going to be pretty much what I said the other night at the Select Board meeting, but I'm going to do it again with a little bit more. Let's see how I do. All right, Article 20 is our regional school budget. Tonight I ask you to reconsider your stance on the budget. It should be noted that the regional budget is 3.08%. Increase the overall budget is one of the lowest in the state. I commend Dr. Hunter and Mr. Connery for bringing forth a responsible budget in a volatile budget climate as evidence in our comparison to our peer districts and budget increases statewide. We've made cuts to our budget already, including a reduction of 7 FTEs. It should be noted that we have an enrollment shift to Concord that accounts for $55,000, which is not taken into consideration during the guideline process. In order for us to reduce our budget to the guideline, it will be necessary to reduce it by another $159,000. The only way to do this is to look at our FTEs. This will have a significant impact to our students and impacts our programming. We've already made some difficult choices. I can assure you we do not take this lightly. We've made many reductions already, and if this article does not pass, the 2 programs that we'll be obligated to cut will be 1 FTE computer science teacher, because we have retirement, and a reduction of 0.25 of an FTE for select chorus. This is a significant impact on students and teachers. Without computer science, our students will lose the ability to complete the engineering certificate. The engineering certificate helps our students differentiate themselves when applying to college and can help guide their career choices. This week, here's my new part. The U.S. News and World Report rankings were released, and I'm happy to report that we are ranked number 20 for high schools in Massachusetts. There are 8 exam and charter schools ahead of us, so that puts us at number 12 for public schools. CCHS is ranked number 1 in the state for STEM and number 13 in the country for STEM programming. We are seeing incredible outcomes of our students thanks to our teachers, staff, and administrators. Our duty as a school committee is to advocate for the needs of students. Student achievement is at the forefront of everything that we do, and I look forward to advocating for our students in these 2 programs at town meeting. While I understand and respect the role of the Finance Committee and the Select Board, we also have a role to advocate for our programs. So I urge you to reconsider the Finance Committee guideline. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Yeah. Dinas Gonatas, and first of all, I hope this won't take too long, but I've been doing
2 minutes. Yeah.
Investigating the feasibility and the advisability of the battery project for the CMAP. They've got 3 motivations for doing it. One is for the low feeder levels because of the prison closing. The second is to think about future solar expansion. And the third is to take advantage of demand charge reduction. I feel that based on the more conservative discount rate of 12%, showing a positive return, if that financial model holds up, that's a great motivation to have a battery, although I would strongly advise doing it in partnership with a third party that's got expertise. The first 2 motivations I don't think are so well advised because the batteries have a significant failure rate, and I recommend against using them for something where they have to be working almost perfectly to protect critical infrastructure. And so I would consider, again, working in partnership with a third party, but I would not weight their arguments for the other two functions where a failure would negate the purpose of the battery in the first place. Thank you.
All right,
Could you repeat your name for me and maybe
Yeah.
spell parts of it? I'm
Sure.
not sure.
Dinos
Dinos.
Gonatas, D-I-N-O-S, last name Gonatas.
Gonates.
AS. And furthermore, the light plan is working on something called, metering domain, which, if it can be expedited with perhaps outside contractors, would provide much better protection for the first motivation than batteries could provide.
all right, thank you. Anybody else from the public? All right, let's get to item number 3, 2014 special town meeting. Brian, you and Jason, is Jason going to be
Yes, I'm
online?
going to promote him to panelist right now.
Okay, perfect. Is Jason going to share the screen, or are you going to show his slides?
Do you want to, why don't we let Jason?
Jason, do you want to share your screen, or should we do it from here? Slides.
What would you like me to present? So I did present already to the Finance Committee. Do you want that presentation again? Do you want the town meeting
No,
presentation?
so we got it in the packet. I wasn't sure whether you wanted to present or not. If
Well,
not-
I didn't submit it for the packet. Maybe Anthony put it in there.
Yeah, I put it in there, Jason, just for reference.
Okay.
Jason didn't put that to.
So then
speak.
let's do this. Let's have a discussion, because I think most folks heard it. I read through it, and you guys saw the quick summary that I put together via Jason's help and Dinos' help. So let me open it up for questions, comments, et cetera.
I have one thing.
Carlin?
Hi, Jason, earlier this evening, we heard a comment from Dinos regarding the third-party system for battery ownership. Is there anything that you can add or to enlighten us on the aspect that his comments have on your proposal? I mean, how?
Absolutely.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, thanks.
thank you for the opportunity to speak on that. So what Dinos is referring to is that some other MLPs have bought batteries, while some have looked to third parties to design and build batteries on their network. These third parties do this because of the significant peak shaving opportunities that they have, and then they typically would reap most of the money reward and then maybe share a little bit with the MLP. So for ratepayers, they might see a little bit of savings, but then they have this big battery. But the battery, when financed by a third party, is used for peak shaving, not for resilience. These other communities don't have the same level of solar saturation, and they're not trying to address the same vulnerability that we are. So we have approached vendors. In the past, this didn't occur to them, and it wasn't of business interest. We approached them more recently, and they were open to at least having a conversation. They acknowledged that our goals might conflict at times, and that might be very difficult to figure out. We are going to have to pay the battery operator to be able to use the battery for resilience. And that model may be much cheaper than buying a battery and incurring the risk of trying to do the peak shaving ourselves. We're completely open to that model if we can make sure that the battery can be used for resilience. Again, the reason why we've come down this path is that in the past, these companies have not indicated a willingness or had a proven model to show that this was a working relationship. So as I mentioned at the previous presentations and forums and hearings, our process would be, if the money is approved at town meeting, we would have the engineers draw up the various scenarios based on the grid distribution network that we have to see where a battery could go, how big the battery can be based on the constraints. Ideally, it's the battery size that we presented, but the warrant doesn't specify the battery, so depending on financials, impact on network, impact on rates, they'll run all sorts of models, and then we'll also examine third-party ownership or alternatives, and then present these to the light board with recommendations and have discussions at open meeting to determine the best path forward. But to date, we haven't seen a working example of this. We've only had two vendors say, we're open to looking at this model, we'll do some homework, and we'll come back to you and see if there's an opportunity here. So if there is an opportunity, we'd love to explore it to understand the risk-benefit analysis of that. But remember, our number one risk is not a financial risk, it's a system integrity risk, which could result in a loss of power to the town or a portion of it.
So, and actually on that point, this is the thing that sort of crystallized for me as a result of the last couple of days. It appears that the solutions that we're exploring may not be in place until fall of 2025. Right, is that correct or no? Brian, why don't you come up here too? Because that way we can get your voice here. Is that correct, or is there a possibility that it can be in play, these can be in place sooner than that?
Well, first time on camera, so let me introduce myself. Brian Folds, I'm the chair of the Light Board, 33 Riverdale. Sorry, I've already forgotten the question because I got.
So it
Formality.
At least the back and forth, it just appears that we're exploring a couple different solutions, long-term.
Yeah,
But they may not be in place until maybe fall of 2025.
right.
And yet we're faced with a short-term between now and then issue of
Oh, the battery could be
the
in
demand and
place.
stuff. And so the question is, what's the mitigation between now and whenever we get a permanent solution in place?
So the battery isn't a temporary solution.
I understand that.
Okay, so it's always been in our strategic plan.
Right.
We just found that load got so low, we needed it for not just saving ratepayers
I
money.
understand that, but that won't be in
protection.
place till fall of 2025, right?
It will be in
Roughly?
place maybe a little sooner than that, but you're right, it'll take about a year.
Okay.
But most importantly, it will use third parties for the site prep and
Oh, that's not
others.
where I'm going. I guess there's an infrastructure risk, right? Because of the low voltage.
Yes,
Okay, so
which is
because-
unavoidable for at least a year.
I understand that. So what is the mitigation to address that until the battery and other solutions are in place? That's the simple question.
Oh, all right. So we've talked about many solutions, but they all relate to generating load. So that could be a discount if we can do the billing system for people to consume power during those weekend days in the
If you're going to
spring
pay
and the
me to
fall.
leave the air conditioning on, I'll sign up.
It's that idea. It would be like, we had one person suggest EVs, getting people who own EVs to charge them fully on Saturdays and Sundays.
So let me just cut to the chase. So you've got a number of ideas. When
Commercial
will you have a
customers
pl-
as well.
Sorry?
Yeah, commercial customers as well, we've been
When
talking
will you
to.
have a plan in place to actually execute one or several of these strategies?
Okay, so,
Because the biggest concern everybody has is infrastructure, right? Between
Yeah.
now and then.
yeah.
This fall. So we won't have an issue this spring because MCA Concord is still online. So MCA Concord will drop offline in the next, couple months. And first of all, we'll know what their load goes to. We don't think it will go to zero, but even the state can't tell us what their load will go to. So we need to understand after July 1st, does it go to zero? Does it go to half what it is today? Does it drop off by just a little bit? Somebody even suggested, can we contact MCI Concord and ask them to say, hey, if we pay the electric rates, can we control your power systems? And
Yeah.
basically, if you're not using the building, can we turn it on as if it were being used and you'll incur no cost? So that's another mitigation that we could explore. But
Okay.
the real issue will be this fall when we have those shoulder month saturation issues, and we will have some mitigations in place by then.
Okay, that answers
And-
my question. Thank you.
Right, but I do want to make the point that the battery is the quickest operational way that we can have direct control.
I understand.
Yeah, the metering domain is 2 years plus out, so we would
I was
have,
just worried about the intervening time.
yeah, as
That
we are.
answers it. And if you can ask him to leave the lights on, that would be good, Jason.
Do you need me?
I don't, no, I don't. You might as well just
Yeah,
stay
you
there.
might as
Brian.
well stick around for a second. So one of the things that, so I've watched, I think, 2 or 3 presentations by Jason. I watched the CMLP board meeting where you approved this article. And I think given that the MCI was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, things are happening with an urgency which perhaps, we wouldn't have expected.
Yes.
And that results, I think, in some squishiness in terms
Yes.
of this plan.
I've
And I think-
noticed, I've noticed the community squishiness,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, well, I think also the plan, right, has some squishiness too, right, in terms of
what exactly you might do, because you're not sure yet. You still have to, you want to buy the battery, I think that much you know, but you don't know whether the metering domain is a possibility still, or we could.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
So I think you're looking at as something to select from. We're actually doing all.
Yeah,
So the metering domain is something we're doing for solar and meeting our solar goals and avoiding large capital investments into batteries.
right.
And we're also going to do batteries because we have to change the bottom of the curve to be flatter and manage that load so that we can go and utilize more of that metering domain.
Right. Well, I guess my point is, I get that based on where you are, you won't have everything all sort of sorted through. It makes sense to me that you don't. And, normally I would say, well, then you don't have a plan yet. I think you do, and I think you have some urgency. And because of the lead time that you need to get this in place, that's why it's sort of we've got to do this now.
Yes.
So I don't typically like that kind of a setup, particularly for a $10 million spend, and I'm sure you don't either.
I don't either.
Right, but
I would
we are
much
where we
rather
are.
have done this in the normal annual
Right.
town meeting process, but
Right.
it was the straw, the
Right, okay.
MCI straw.
So what I'm asking is, as you go through this process, whether it's through the light board or through public hearings or use of the select board, remember that, right? So if things change, just keep talking to people to come back and
Yeah.
keep explaining what's going on, and they shouldn't be surprised. Perhaps even at your presentation and your town meeting, you'd say, look, things could, generally, this is what we're doing, but things may shift, and if they do, we'll come back
Yep.
and talk to you about it, and potentially even ask you to, you might need to revote on things. But I think that's
Yeah.
that's part of some of the questions that you were getting to. I think.
Yes, and this article really opens up the options in the bidding process. That's why it's important, because we think an ownership model is what Concord Light is going to do best with for priorities and how it operates. Also financially, it may be the best. But if we find that a third party works better, then we can go that route.
Yeah.
If this article was not to pass, we just lose the option of going out and borrowing for the battery.
Right.
We would have to work with a third party.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have a question. When you go out to borrow, you're borrowing through the light plant, but how does that affect the borrowing capability or capacity for the other parts of the town to go out and borrow?
Above my pay
You're
grade.
talking
It's-
10.5,
It's general obligation debt, D.
it's general obligation debt. Okay, but only your ratepayers are going to be paying toward the use of the facility, or the. whether
Yeah, so
you're-
the 10.4 would be repaid by ratepayers, not by taxpayers. So it's not property taxes, it's rates.
Okay.
But it's
Yes, it is the same people, yes.
Yeah, but if something happened and somehow the ratepayers couldn't pay it, it's an obligation of the
Correct.
town. Right.
Correct.
No, I did have another question. I'm wondering, why did we have a special town meeting on this? This
We-
is-
Wasn't in the
Come
warrant.
up in the, in
Why
But it
why are
was
we-
in the
why-
warrant.
why are we
Changed
having it
so
or
much,
no?
you know how you can only change it so much, and the moderator,
Only-
I think,
and
said,
that's why,
yeah.
okay, all right.
The issue is that the original article specified location for the battery. So,
Well,
but
they've
not-
also they have also told us the location of the battery.
but
is
it's
gonna be-
different than
It's
what was in the
different.
warrant.
It's different.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
different.
So
It
it was the
changed.
price and the cost was also different. Okay.
Yeah. Eric?
Two questions on the impact to the ratepayers. I have the chart here that Jason showed at our last meeting of
Yes.
in the
The
immediate
first-
term it'll bump up
First
and
2
then
years waiting for that IRA rebate, yes.
And my question is, what can you quantify the projected savings to the town and the schools as ratepayers themselves over the 20-year period?
Yeah, if you look at that slide, it uses the average residential customer, and you could do a per kilowatt consumption. So if you took that, it would be a good estimate for a commercial customer like the schools, but you'd have to scale it up. So I don't know a fixed number.
Actually, I do have that information. We looked into that for you.
He's really great. He's interim. He's doing awesome.
So what we came up with was, over the 20-year life of this, the town would save $725,000 in electricity, and the schools would save $420,000 in electricity.
Significant.
I thought the schools were the largest ratepayers. That's what I heard a couple days ago. Is that not true?
They're in the top,
Hospital.
they're in the top five.
Yeah.
But the town draws more electricity?
No, the schools.
So then how come the town saves 700 and the schools save 400? How does
Um,
how does
because
the
the-
math work there?
Yeah, so let me see, I can tell you. So we have, no, actually, you're right, the town does draw more. So it's 9 million kilowatt hours, 9.1 million, 9.1 megawatt hours for the town, and 5.3 megawatt hours for the school.
So, okay, so the schools use half the electricity. Okay.
That sounds
thank you.
about right, yeah.
Who are the other large users?
Hospital.
Hospital,
Prison
water
was,
treatment.
300 Baker
We
Ave.
have a customer we met with recently, Plug Power. They have, I think it was a 3 megawatt connection. Yeah, so they have a 3 megawatt switch. It's pretty large consumption.
300 Baker Ave, the Department of Corrections, the schools, those are the biggest.
Eric, another question?
My second question is, given that the urgency here is being driven by the state's somewhat unexpected decision to close down the prison so abruptly, have there been any discussions of the state helping to foot the bill for this thing?
So that question has come up, and Jason, if you've researched an answer, my view on that is there's no obligation to consume electricity under our rate structure, and they're just a customer like every other customer. They don't have any kind of contract that we could point to that says you're supposed to have this much demand for electricity.
That being said, we don't have a problem researching it, reaching out to state legislators to find out if there's an opportunity there. I think if the battery pans out to be a moneymaker, it's hard to say you need to pay us money to make a bunch of money. But if we are incurring a cost and a risk, it can't hurt to ask, right? Is just to bring up the conversation about both control of load and also to see if there's any money there. So we will absolutely do that. We'll try to have at least reached out before town meeting.
Yeah.
Hold on. Is anyone on Zoom? Peggy, Don? Do you guys have questions at all?
It's not a question, but I did want to, for the committee to know that this last week, totally unrelated, I came across this, the Department of Energy released a white paper on the resilience of the grid and the big increase in electrical consumption in the last 2 years. And they advocated for measures of this sort, local battery storage. So that was reassuring to see that that's something that's certainly not just us, but the DOE is also recommending that local utilities do things of this sort.
Good, thank you. Dee, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess I'm just a little concerned about what I have read towards your plan. I'm not finding a real plan. I'm not seeing a real plan in place. And I'm just wondering, when do you expect that you would have aspects of what you're doing in a planned format? So that I could look at it and say, okay, the next 2 years, X and Y are going to happen, et cetera.
So I think that we have a draft RFP for utility scale battery storage. So we would dust that off because it's been sitting around for a couple of years. We would make sure that it includes all the things that we need. And then with this authorization, we'd be able to go out to bid while the engineers consider and the finance teams consider all these other options to look at financial return, the risk, whatever. And once we have the actual dollars, because when we go out to bid, battery prices, they may be better than we anticipated, they may be worse than we anticipated, but we're going off of estimates of other projects built and manufacturers that could be wildly different based on our situation. So until we can go out to bid, which we can't do until we have money, we don't know what the ownership model will cost. But once we do, then we can compare apples to apples and say, this is the best path forward. But until we go out to bid, everything is hypothetical because we're basing it on a project that started 3 years ago, and those numbers may be totally invalid today.
So let me try something, Dee, because I hear what you're saying. So, because,
Yeah,
and you may not, let me just,
go ahead.
so assume that the article passes at the end of April, right? Is there like a plan that by the end of Q1, we're going to put out the RFP, select by whatever? I think that's, Dee, what you're kind of looking for. Is there something you can just sort of speak to at a high, we're not committing you to dates right now, but kind of generally 3 or 4 major steps between now and whomever is the chair of the select board, Mary, maybe pressing the button to turn the battery on? Just
Well,
high level
Jason-
to give a sense of what the flow is, or is that not possible right now?
Oh, no, it's very possible. And Jason, do you want to speak to this?
Just,
I
yeah,
don't
just
wanna-
3 or 4 major milestones. I think that's Dee, because
So I would, my guess is that in a couple months, we would have something before the light board to consider.
Right.
And, that would be based on, now, the bidding process itself can take a few months. So I think it really depends on what kind of responses we get. But, we have all the components ready. So, and it would be early May, not late April, because special town meeting is on May 1st. Don't forget, everybody, come vote. I would expect that, in our light board meetings in May and June, we'd be able to give substantial updates on what we see happening, and that maybe by the July meeting, we might start looking at options. But Brian, were you going to say something else?
Well, I was something very similar, which is basically that we would then, the RFP, sending out, receiving bids, that normal procurement process would be overseen. If the public wanted to see it, would be light board is where that will all go through.
Does that help? Hold on one second. We need to get to your mic, and Peggy also had her hands raised first. So let me get to Peggy, and then we'll get to you, Kathy. Peggy?
Yes, I'm just concerned on the bidding process and whether if the low bidder is a company that's under stress or politically undesirable, whether that comes into play.
We have the ability to choose which bid we decide to move forward with. It doesn't have to be, it's not a commodity style process. Does that answer?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And thank you, Brian. So glad to see you here.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Simple question,
Yeah.
I hope. Once you pick a vendor, what's the time frame for delivery?
That's very vendor dependent. It's so SDA is a consultant we've used. Jason, do you remember the turnaround that maybe an SDA estimate, and we'll talk about the Tesla estimate?
SDA was around 12, 16 months, from the time that the contract is signed and permits are granted until
Right.
you're turning it on.
So
But
we're going to
some
get on this
projects are much
fast.
faster.
Huh?
We're going to get on this fast because we need this to be in place, because those ways of getting customers to add load during those events is something because right now, today, we have no way to tell customers they have to use electricity, and we have no way in our contracts to tell a solar installation here in town to stop producing energy. We've worked on margins of error, and we're out of margin.
12 to 18 months for
Yep.
delivery.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tesla's saying
No,
Q.
that's to go live, not delivery necessarily.
Yeah, so Tesla's about 6 months ahead of that, but yeah, that's a reasonable estimate.
Just had one
That
question.
would be back to my comment. Thank you.
I had one question on that chart that you show, it has the U and the inverted U. On the bar there on the bottom, it has a line around about Middlesex. Is Middlesex doing a solar installation? Is that part of the concern
They
as well?
expressed interest in doing a 0.5 megawatt of solar. We're not able to interconnect them unless that battery is operational.
Okay.
The other commercial customers on that bus have approached the light plant before, and those haven't come to fruition.
So I'm interested in knowing if you have a backup plan. In the unlikely event that all of these bidders come in higher than 10.5 million, which is your upper limit, right?
Yeah.
Then what do you do? Do you have a how do you go forward?
We're using very conservative numbers. I would be surprised if we didn't get a bid that worked within the number, but.
That's not answering my question.
Well, I'm getting there.
You're getting there.
I'm
All
getting
right,
there. We would probably be forced to reduce the megawatt hours of the battery to bring it within budget. And we don't want to do that, but it's completely manageable to do it.
So that is your backup plan?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank
Yeah.
you.
Keep using the electricity.
The clean electricity, can I, a little plug, we actually hit 100% non-emitting this year, or 2023.
That's
So,
neat.
yeah.
Any other questions? I think we've drained our resources. That was a joke.
Thank you very much.
Laughter?
That was good.
All right, can I get a motion, or do we want discussion? Actually, let's discuss if we have discussion. Do you, nodded your head, you want to discuss?
Yeah,
Do you want to do the opening bid?
I guess I have this level of uncertainty associated with a real plan, a game plan, the cost of it, time frame. I just see pieces, and it sounds good, but I'm not convinced that it is something that I could go and sell myself.
Fair enough. Others? Carlin?
I have full faith and confidence that our light plan.
Sorry, say that again?
I said, I have full faith and confidence that our light plan can handle all this. I'm fully on board.
Okay. Hey, Lois?
Yeah, I agree with Carlin. I think this is something that the light plant has, and the light board have full competence to manage. And yeah, I mean, I understand Dee's concerns. It would be nice to have a more detailed timeline and a better set of expectations laid out, but that's a reflection of the fact that the closing of MCI Concord was sprung on us, and this is one of the ripple effects of it. Given the lead times that we're hearing about, and given the potential urgency of the problems, I think the light board and the light plant have focused in the right places, and I'm confident that they can manage the project if they get the funding. So I'm comfortable with it too.
I was just going to ask, would we have done this if it wasn't for this prison situation?
I think the answer is yes. Long story short, from my understanding.
Maybe
they've
not
had
now, but we would have.
They've had a couple different, so the low voltage issue was there, and they were working to address it through another means. And then, this is the sequence I'm gathering, the solar panel task force recommended the battery. They were working with CMLP around siting and all that, and then Concord MCI came along and led us to where we are. At a high level, that's the sequence of events, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the short answer is yes, but that's kind of what's happened, basically.
Yeah, so to me, like, I mean, I'm with Luis and Carlin as well.
Okay.
We should proceed. But I guess the other question that I had, maybe it was already answered. Useful, life for these batteries are 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you can extend it to up to 50 years or so, I think I read it in there, or, by changing parts. Do we know what that cost? Maybe is it $500,000 a year, or?
So the battery itself does have that warranty. Some manufacturers 15, some 20. You can switch out cells if you know cells are going bad within a module, and there's expense doing that. But really what happens is each battery kind of, its capacity reduces over time and usage. So they're all going to, most of them, 90% of them are all going to go down at the same rate of loss of capacity. And at some point, you're going to be replacing all the cells in a module because they're all at 50%, and you want them more up in the 90% for the battery. So yeah, this is something that will do its 20 years, and we'll be thankful when we get the next technology that's a lot cheaper and does something similar.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah. And it,
Post 20-year cost. I mean, things will change.
right.
Eric?
For all the reasons that have already been stated, I support this. And over and above that, the fact that this is going to save, this is like a double
This
whammy
has
in a good
always
way.
been
It's
in the
going to save
plan.
us money as ratepayers, and it's going to it's modest, but it's going to save us money as taxpayers as well. So I support it.
$1 million between the schools and the town. So that's good. Anybody else want to say anything? Otherwise, I'll just, so for my, I agree, we have to do this, right? I understand, Dee, where you're coming from. I think communication-wise, it would have been nice, maybe in a slide, to just high level, next 2 months, next 3 months, even without detail, but
Yeah.
that's fine. We understand where you're headed now, so, having said that, do we want a motion or anything, or do we want to keep discussing?
I think we can make a motion. Anybody? Okay, so motion for affirmative action on Article 1, the special town meeting.
Second.
Okay. Since we are remote as well, Dee, do you want to do the roll call, please?
Okay. Roll call. Peggy?
Aye.
Kathy? Yes. Eric?
Yes.
Go all the way down here. Lindsay?
Yes.
Dee? Abstain. Parshar?
Yes.
Carlin?
Aye.
Chris Reynolds?
Aye.
Lois?
Aye.
Quasi?
Aye.
It's
And then Peggy and Don, did
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Don.
Aye.
Peggy?
I did get
Oh, you
paid.
did, okay.
Yeah, she got paid.
Motion
Aye.
approved.
Motion approved, thank you. Shall we go back to the agenda and the presentation? Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Brian. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving along at a quick pace. Item number 4, Article 7 of the 2024 town meeting. So this one almost fell through the cracks, but we caught it. So take it away, Anthony.
Great, thank you. So Kerry made a presentation to the Select Board on Monday evening, and this has to do, if you recall, prior to last town meeting, during 2023 annual town meeting, there was an adjustment that needed to be made to the budget, and it was a negative $515,000 and change that was booked against general government. Kerry wanted to address this where we knew that we needed to make adjustments. So the chart up here is basically taking that adjustment and proportionally putting it to each of the different units listed above there, and then within each department proportionally to their share of the budget. So that's how we will get rid of that negative from this fiscal year's budget and decrease various departments' budgets. Now, it was mentioned, and I think it was by maybe Mary behind me at the meeting on Monday, how does this affect department budgets? And the message that Kerry passed to the Select Board is that throughout this year, she held back on filling some of the vacancies, and that through attrition was able to absorb this decrease to the department's budgets.
Do we have any questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, Colin.
Do you have any idea how many FTEs or portion of FTEs were not filled because of this?
I don't know the total. I know within my own department, when I got here, there was 3 positions that, and we still have 2 that are still vacant.
Other questions? Don, Peggy, questions?
No, thank you.
So, $515,000 hole is what the town began with last year.
That's correct.
Right.
And because that was known, the town and the leaders managed, in essence, to save the money one by hook or crook off of a $31 million budget, which is pretty good. So want to thank you for that. And I just, keep in mind the context of doing that without any notice, frankly. And the fact that you were able to do it is good news, frankly.
Well,
So-
credit to our town manager.
Yeah, and I don't know what percent, I was trying to calculate and I didn't do a good job of calculating, but just 0.51 divided by 31.7, right? Is a little bit, about 1.4, 1.3% of the budget.
That's
So
not small.
that is not a small amount, so thank you.
Well, I just have one quick, so, as you close out the year, so we're 2 months away from your fiscal year end, so you think you've absorbed this, or you're gonna have to use, how much room have you got now as you try to close the budget? Are we gonna be right on it, or?
It's
What
going
do
to
you
be
think?
tight,
Yeah.
and we're probably going to need some other adjustments, but under Mass General Law, I think it's Chapter 44, Section 33B or something, we're able to do that by going to the Select Board and coming back to the
Right,
Finance
coming in?
Committee.
So we might have that in the summer?
Yeah, I'd
Yeah,
probably guess
I would
that
think so,
we
yeah.
would have something.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Had that in the past.
We have, right?
Those legal fees.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve Article 7?
Recommend affirmative action.
Sure.
Recommend affirmative action on Article 7.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Roll call.
I'm not a good drummer, but.
Okay, Peggy?
Yes.
No. Okay. Eric?
Yes.
The reason it takes me so long is because my lines are not very
I'm gonna
straight.
type
I'm
it up.
sorry, that's okay. We're almost done. Don?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Dee? Yes. Parshar?
Yes.
Carlin?
Aye.
Chris?
Yes.
Quasi?
Aye.
Lois?
Aye.
We have one more.
Oh, Kathy, yes. Unanimous affirmative action.
Okay, all
Article
right.
7.
Excellent. So the next item is 2229 Main Street.
Yeah,
Paul's going to come here at 8 o'clock.
You want to go through correspondence?
So we can either take a break for 20 minutes, which I don't recommend, or do we want to go through the Finance Committee year-end review? Because correspondence won't take that
I
long.
think that's a good idea. Have a couple
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, let's do that.
Let's go through that. Anthony, why don't you pull up the PowerPoint slides? And while Anthony does that, sort of context, right? And we talked about this at the beginning of last year. We'll develop a work plan, try to keep track of it, and then at the end of the year, look back on ourselves and kind of see how we did. And then what we'll also do, and Eric said it'd be helpful to him and the committee next year, is just write down from our observations and conversations, lessons learned, moving forward. So if we can go to slide 3, we're not going to go through all of it because we know, okay, so right here. So, and again, this is draft, and we can change these things, the colors, the comments, whatever we'd like, that way it's memorialized. But I put down red, yellow, green, scored ourselves a little bit based on sort of my gut check. So let's just go through this sort of one at a time, if you will. Sustainable revenue growth, right? We had a number of deliverables and objectives that we tried to get at, and we were successful, I think, on some of them, but not necessarily all of them. I gave ourselves a yellow because I frankly didn't see a whole lot of tangible progress coming out of the select board on some of this stuff, right? I think we talked to the schools about the user fees, and they showed us, hey, they reassessed the user fees and they increased them. So I thought that was actually pretty good. We never got to reviewing and updating the town rental agreements. And I think we were probably a bit too ambitious on the last one, town processes that inhibit new business development. Again, we sent a letter, but then we didn't really follow up with the town of, hey, what are you doing on permits and licenses, et cetera. If you talk to some business owners around town that are trying to develop properties, that's a real issue. And as a finance committee, we didn't really focus much on it. And so gave ourselves a yellow on that. I'll leave it up. Go ahead.
You know, that might be an opportunity for us with one of the people on the committee to be in contact with town staff, if it's the economic development person or something, rather than, you know, a different committee, like the ones we typically do, recreation. So that might be an opportunity there, is to have better relationship with some of the staff associated with town work.
So adding a new liaison position?
A different liaison position, just shifting it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea, and I think that's just something that you guys ought to talk to, and then frankly, talk to Carrie as well, because
Yeah.
to what extent, she's the leader of the
Right,
town.
right.
So, but that's a conversation I have with Carrie, perhaps. Mary, you're going to say something? Do you want to join the discussion? And Tracy, if you want to join the discussion also, I mean, this is all.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Hartman, 16 Concord Green. Member of the Select Board, speaking for myself. I think having a liaison at the Economic Vitality Committee is a great idea. We've been talking about this for, a year, which is really why we hired an Economic Vitality Director. What we're learning is that it's not the staff and it's not necessarily the processes that are inhibiting business growth in town, it's our own policies. So it's a deeper problem than simply let's go and change, or let's make the paperwork flow, streamline paperwork, or it's more, what are some of the policies that the town has initiated, some through town meeting, that we need to look at? So I
Like
guess it's
zoning?
good, what?
Like zoning?
Like zoning.
Okay.
Yes, like zoning. And actually, planning is looking into parking requirements next year. This year, they've been focused on the MBTA communities. Next year, they're going to be looking at parking requirements, which is a big inhibitor to businesses. And I could tell you lots of stories, but I won't. So the point I'm making is that it's good to know what the real issue is, and the issue isn't necessarily staff, lack of staff, or staff that it's more our own policies.
So then the question is, what steps will the select board be taking to review those policies and make recommendations to various committees?
Well, one of the things is, this is a planning board issue. A lot of this is our zoning, so you
I
have,
understand that, but you guys have the bully pulpit, and as the politically elected leaders.
I'm using it now.
Right?
Yes,
I mean-
I'm bringing visibility
No,
to it
that's
now,
good.
and the more we bang, like, it's parking, this year it's parking, we're going to do everything we can around parking.
Okay.
And, these things move slowly, but it's putting pressure on that's the wrong way to say it. It's letting the planning board know that this is the direction that the town wants to grow. And the other. No. I'm saying that some of the parking requirements that we have for buildings, like, for example, if a building, say we have a tenant in a building in Concord, and they've got some special parking, they have a special right to have a certain amount of parking spaces in order to have their business, and they move out. All of a sudden, now it opens it up to the new zoning. They're grandfathered in, and now they're open to the zoning laws that require more parking, okay? And there isn't more parking available. So it's much harder to get a business person to move into that, knowing that they need parking, but it isn't available. So it's very complicated.
What can the Finance Committee do to be a constructive part of the process?
By continuing to emphasize revenue generation through businesses, recruiting and retaining good businesses, and doing exactly what you're doing tonight, which is to say next year, yes, we want to talk about this again and keep bringing it up. Because I think we all want the same thing, which is more revenue. How do we get there? So, yeah, I think you're doing what you can as far as making it one of your goals.
Okay, good, thank you. Let's do something a little odd. Let's go back to the original agenda item, because I don't want to keep Paul here until 9:30 at night. Paul, come on up. So,
Just finishing, decompressing for one meeting. Here we go.
do you need a, oh,
Need a
hopefully-
break?
You don't want to listen to the next half hour of that. So ask Paul to come in and just high level, I don't know if you shared slides, but I don't know that we need to go through them, but maybe just a conversation around
Yeah.
role of the finance committee. You'll see, I don't know if you saw that, but we actually were supposed to be working with you a little bit more closely than we did, so we gave ourselves a red for not doing that, and so apologies for that. But I think it's important, at least for Eric and next year's committee, to get involved now as you guys are developing your recommendations for October, right? So maybe just give everybody here a sense of kind of where you guys are, some things you're thinking about, and how the finance committee can help you guys input until October.
Sure, appreciate the opportunity. There are some financial issues in the future. It's kind of my theme right now. So I gave you one slide, and I think Anthony added
Anthony, you
a
wanna-
separate.
I do.
Okay, do you want to bring that up, Anthony?
There's a whole package in it. That's from the public forum from
Yep.
November.
Right.
We're having another public forum on June 4th,
Okay.
which is sort of more relevant, it's more update where we are. Let me just go back a little bit. The task force was charged by the select board early last year, and we started in May of 2023. We had just the charge was a few pages, but basically we broke it down into four different elements. We were asked by the select board to make a recommendation whether we recommend that the town acquire the site or not. Turns out it's not a binary decision, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So that was basic charge, and to come to that set of recommendations, we had to look at legal aspects, working with town council on that. We had to revisit the reuse. What would we use the site for? What could the site be used for? What are the needs of the town? We did a lot of research along all of these lines. We had a whole risk stream. Okay, if we're going to reuse the site, when the site is cleaned up, what are the residual risks to any of the reuse? So that's the risk element. And then the fourth one was, if the town acquires the site, what are both the obligations and the financial aspects of actually owning the site? So these are, of course, they're integrated, but we had four different work streams working on all those. And we went through a long stage of I'll call it research and fact-finding. Part of that fact-finding, especially on the reuse side, was to talk to a lot of people, a lot of town departments, a lot of town committees, talk to developers, talk to third-party, private parties for potential interests, just to gather what are the possibilities for the site and what are the real needs of the town. On the legal side, there was a lot of research. On the risk side, the town was awarded a TAG grant, technical assistance grant from the Mass DEP, and the town hired a consultant to assist our task force on evaluating the risk side of it. And on the risk side of it, to manage a Superfund site and to decide on what needs to be cleaned up, there's a tremendous amount of risk assessment done at the beginning. That risk assessment was basically, what did the site look like before it was cleaned up, and how is it supposed to be cleaned up? What methods, how much money, what are the goals of the cleanup? The risk we're working on right now is when the site is cleaned up, assuming it's cleaned up and meets all the goals, and we're monitoring that, what will the residual risks be of reuse? There's a sister committee, the 2229 Main Street Oversight Committee, which is still in existence. They've been in existence in early 2000s, 2004, 5, after it became a Superfund site in 2001. That group is looking at all the technical aspects, all the documents, all the risk assessments, the cleanup methods. So we're working with them, and plus we're working very closely with both EPA and with DeMaximus, who's the contractor. So it's a team effort helping us to get the information that we need to go forward. So where we are right now is, I'd say we're largely done with our research. We're going to go into the deliberation stage. So we're going to present sort of our research in the public forum. We're not going to present any recommendations because we haven't really decided on that yet. And then we're due to brief the select board on our findings, I think on the 17th of June. And then we'll probably go into report writing mode later in the summer. The report's due October 31st, Halloween, for some reason. And we'll present it in costume, maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Radioactive costume?
It's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
And we made good progress, because we started out, it was such a multidimensional problem, we didn't think we could probably get it all done. Very hard-working task force, working closely together, very dedicated group of people.
Anthony, can you throw up that one slide? Because I think,
Yeah, so that once, since this is the Finance Committee, I figured I'd tell you what we're looking at on the financial aspect, is what and where we're going to end up. So that the financial aspects of our work, and I say may include, because we haven't finalized anything yet, but we're looking at what's it going to cost to acquire the site. And those costs could be mortgages and liens on the site. It could be transactional costs with town council, all the costs to acquire the site. And let me just say right away that our recommendation, when I say it can't be binary, at this point, we can't recommend to the select board acquire the site, because there's a lot of unknowns that we can't negotiate a lot of that with EPA and other parties until the select board makes a decision to proceed with those negotiations. We can't decide what we're going to do with the site. We're providing a lot of options. In a previous committee, there was a reuse committee. We provided sort of a master plan. This committee has dealing with 3 different scenarios of redevelopment. But exactly what's going to be done on that site, how we mix and match those, is part of a planning effort that has to take place once the select board decides to move forward on planning. So, and only then will be determined what's going to be done at the site, what are the capital costs and investments of doing that, and how does development of that site mesh with and relate to what we might be doing at other places, right? MCI and other places. So there's a larger planning effort that I assume this site will be merged into in terms of sort of reuse. So I don't want to disappoint anybody by saying, we don't have, I know you've asked for capital costs, and I said, I wish we knew exactly what we were doing and how much it's going to cost. But we have, we know that there possibly could be playing fields. There could be solar arrays. There could be battery storage. There could be other structures there, but we can't really specify.
so you
what
can't
that's going to be.
specify, but it says here you're on track for developing recommendations.
Yeah.
So, for example, will you, in the October report, would you recommend, first option would be to acquire and turn it into a commercial retail site? Second option would be to Rex or mixed-use develop? Is that how specific those recommendations are going to be or not?
We haven't decided how we have several different scenarios. We haven't, as a task force, decided whether we're going to vote on number 1, number 2, number 3, and each scenario has different possibilities. So it could be that, for example, one of those scenarios has a big part of recreation. Maybe there's a recommendation that the site is just recreation. Another one has conservation. Maybe it's a site that's all conservation planning. So we can't answer you. We haven't voted on whether we're going to recommend one scenario or part of a scenario yet. So it's still in
And will the
progress.
public have an opportunity, will you have draft recommendations, put it out there for public input, or are you taking public input along the process, but then the final the final report will be delivered without an opportunity to get public input on your actual recommendations?
Well, on the reuse, we've certainly been getting public input since 2019.
Yeah,
The predecessor committee, which was the reuse committee.
sure.
We had, a workshop and public forum.
Right.
We have several public forums here. I think importantly, we're talking to town departments right now and town groups, so we're getting more information. So yeah, we're getting that level of input. Whether the report will go out for public comment, it's kind of up to the select board. We haven't really engaged with the select board what they want to do with the report. But, it's really important to get public input on
Yeah,
this.
and I appreciate that over the years, people have had opportunity at different stages, but I think it would be good if you had a draft report, put that out there for 30 days, take that comment into account, bake it in or not, whatever you choose to do, and then deliver the report, because it's hard for folks to, over multiple years, to understand kind of where everybody is.
fair.
Once you guys integrate it, people will now say, I see the directions that they're thinking about, now let me weigh in. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the previous reuse report is not that aged. It was 2020, and that went out for public comment, and yes, things have changed.
Exactly, right?
And we have other plans. We have a recreation strategic plan, there's an open space, so there are other plans that have evolved since then.
And our financial situation is different, I think, than 4 years ago, frankly, and that's where I'm getting at,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that might be helpful, but Eric
So
is going to,
just, these are, just very quickly, these are to assist you on financial thinking. We're going to try to estimate the cost of acquisition within uncertainty, and there's going to be uncertainty in these numbers. We are going to come up at least with the site preparation costs. We are talking with DPW and outside contractors. If we acquire the site, for any purpose, we have to build roadways and sewers and drainage and storm sewers, so that's what I mean by the site preparation. That will be in the report. But specific capital investments for specific reuse purposes, probably not in this report. Cost estimates of town ownership. If the town acquires it, what's it going to take in terms of additional police staff, additional fire staff, and the town will have to do certain inspections on the site, so that we're going to estimate the cost of ownership and the cost of insurance in there. So the other part, the fourth bullet there, if the town decides not to acquire the site, are there any costs to the town? If the site is purchased by a developer and is a 200-unit development, well, probably there's going to be some, fire and police oversight costs and other costs. So we don't have all those numbers now. We're starting to work on those numbers. Those are the types of things at that level of uncertainty are going to be in the report.
so I'll say this, despite what I said earlier, that we probably should have been involved a little bit more, and I'll say this as the outgoing person and not responsible for this anymore, but I think somebody on the finance committee should probably start talking to you guys in the next couple of
Another
weeks.
liaison.
Well, hold on a second. So let me just finish, and then I'll turn it over to Eric as the incoming person to add some thoughts. So I think it's an important time now, right? And so to the extent that you can take finance committee's input as you develop this, I think it would be very helpful. And Eric, can I just ask Eric?
You did assign this to me,
I did.
and I have been following
Fair enough.
some of the discussions.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Well, we'll get to that because that's going to be on our things to learn from. Eric.
No, just, I agree, we need to be involved as this progresses. I'm especially interested, you heard what we were talking about when you joined us in the revenue side of the equation as well.
Briefly caught the end of that, yeah.
So we're interested in the costs, of course, but also the revenues.
And there are several scenarios where we're going to estimate those revenue. We've talked about that. A private, certain housing development or certain recreational facilities where they're done by private developers. So we are going to start to estimate revenues from those. At least at the point, we'll say, there's going to be revenue generation from this scenario, and it's likely to be a certain magnitude. This is order of magnitude type of estimation at this point, because remember, we're just making a recommendation, and what's going to follow, if the recommendations are acted on, there's going to be some more granular planning and estimation for these, and so that's not, we're going to jumpstart that process, but we're not going to jump into it.
Will commercial retail be included in that or no, as an option? You mentioned housing, you mentioned recreation. Have you ruled out the notion of having any
We
retail?
haven't ruled it out, but we haven't fielded any interest.
Oh, interesting. So nobody's really interested in it that way?
Not yet.
Okay.
It depends. We are talking to one organization that builds recreational complexes, the private group, and they work with town municipal-private partnerships to build recreation facilities, and that would generate tax revenues as well. So that's one type of entity that
Okay.
we just talked to them recently.
Oh, good.
It's a group that's built in Wellesley on a piece of property that was owned by the town, and they went into partnership with the town. The town said, we can give you this property with a ground lease, and we'll share the revenues, tax revenues from that, but you should build it to the specified needs of the town. So, that's, but even that level of planning, we talked to those groups, that will follow on from our recommendations. It won't be embedded in detail in the recommendations.
Okay. I see Chris, Carlin, and I see Peggy. So we'll go in that order. Chris.
Paul, have you developed the criteria for how you're going to evaluate or come up with the recommendations? So do you have sort of a framework that says, or a scoring system that would say, this is how we're going to evaluate options to come up with some recommendations?
A scoring system. I don't think we have a quantitative scoring system. It's something we should probably talk about, because I'm an engineer. I like scoring systems.
I'm an accountant. I like numbers.
Oh,
I
yeah.
like
Okay.
I think we found something for Chris to do after FinCom.
No, I'm good.
I don't.
But that's where the revenue piece could come in, right? So which of these options, could increase
I
town
haven't thought
revenue?
about whether it's amenable to a scoring system.
But some criteria, right? Otherwise, how do you come up with an answer? How do you explain, is it sort of something that you know it when you see it, or is there a way to think about it?
If our charge was, you guys come up with the plan, the recommendation, what goes where specifically, we probably have to do that. But we're into sort of optional scenarios right now. And it'd be tough for us to weigh, hypothetically, the need the DPW has versus the need the Recreation Department has versus the need this. It'd be hard to score that.
I don't
Not
know.
impossible.
It's not impossible. I think
Not
you can.
impossible.
I think you can. I think you can. Give it a try. Give it a try.
I get everybody in the same room.
I think you heard. Carlin?
Thanks. Paul, you mentioned timing. Now, there are several projects in town that are going to be involved in planning. You mentioned MCI, as well as this 2229 Main Street. But there's another one that you're involved in, and that's Peabody. How do you see, are you going to be referencing the timing of the Peabody property in your report in relation to 2229 Main Street, or what are you going to do about Peabody? Where does this fit
Well,
in?
I think you're overstating with our involvement in Peabody. The Recreation Commission took a look at Peabody because it's being decommissioned, and it's a building that's going to be used for something or sold. So we're putting, I'm on the Recreation Commission as well, so putting on the Recreation Commission hat, we're interested in indoor recreation, whether that is suitable or not, and what it would cost to renovate that building. We're in very early stage of doing that, but I know the Select Board is going to start thinking about land use planning in a broader sense, so that's beyond the charge of, I'm enthusiastically support that, but that's not something we can do in my committee.
Peggy?
Who is the seller? I mean, you've talked about whether the town should buy it or have a private developer. I mean, who's the seller here?
Just finished a meeting with town council. So this has interesting history. It was owned by StarMet Corporation, but StarMet went through a bankruptcy proceedings, and they basically dissolved the company. There is no seller. There is no bona fide owner right now. So if the town decides to purchase it, it's really sitting down with the EPA and examining what liens there are, what outstanding mortgages there are, how to negotiate those potential costs. For example, there's and this is publicly known, we've reported it, there's a federal lien on the property. The federal lien on the property is over $100 million on the property. But EPA basically has told the town that they are amenable and almost certain that they can forgive all of that lien, but they have to sit down with the town and negotiate the terms of that. And probably those terms are going to be something to do with the windfall lien. So if the town acquires it, they don't want us to sell it to make a profit. If they forgive that lien, so if we do that, they may want to share that revenue. So that's something to be negotiated, but there is no real seller right now. It's, but there are financial obligations that we have to know, and they have to be negotiated with the EPA and Department of Justice. And then if the town takes it by, for example, eminent domain, we have to determine if there's compensation of any sort due to any party. And, legal counsel has to spend. So let me just say our job is to recommend to the select board whether to proceed along the pathway towards acquisition. We can't recommend acquire it because there's too many unknowns. So the decision is to proceed or not to proceed. Are we interested in the site potentially or not? And if we're interested, then issues related to how much it's going to cost and who to negotiate with and how to negotiate that, those will come out of that next step.
If we decide not to proceed, anybody else can step in and start talking to the federal government, right? EPA.
They could. They could. There are some significant financial hurdles. For example, it's not clear whether this federal lien would be forgiven of a private party, which is a pretty
So
big
it could just
stumbling block.
sit there as it is. Not it, I mean,
It could be, yeah, nobody could do anything
yeah,
with it. And
it would just sit there.
It would sit there. And then, I'm not sure the town would be comfortable with it just sitting there. We'd have to have some control over through zoning or some, even negotiates with EPA, because the site's cleaned up and has to make sure that the risk after cleanup, which is going to be very low, nothing affects that risk. No trespass, nobody. So I think the town would have some interest in, even if they didn't acquire it,
Okay.
making sure that it
So
remains
there's going to be
safe.
some minimal investment,
There'd be
if
some
nothing
minimal
happens.
involvement.
I see, okay.
Yeah.
So, oh, go
So
ahead,
my
Peggy.
understanding, I'm sorry, just to finish, my understanding it's cleaned up to residential standards. And I also think the planning, I don't know if it's a FinCom issue, I really don't think it is, to be honest. This is gonna be abutting the Thoreau, or Camp Thoreau 40B. So it's a lot of residential in one area.
Yeah, and I would say, Peggy, that I think, as we talked about last summer, the interest of the Finance Committee is to encourage the use of revenue-generating use as much as possible, right? And if it sits there unused, there's some minimal financial cost to the town. That's all I was suggesting, right? So. I think
My
Chris-
concern is it's not minimal if we buy it.
I'm sorry, say that again, Peggy?
But we don't.
My concern is the potential liability if we buy it.
I agree. I'm not suggesting, again, if we buy it, I personally would prefer that the town use it to generate revenue. That's all. Chris, you were going to say something, and then we'll go to Kathy.
Yeah, I just, so your clarifying comment on what your purpose is important, I think. So you're really looking at the risks associated with acquiring it, and you're going to make a recommendation to the select board as to whether, when you weigh those risks with whatever the potential uses could be, is it worth going forward? That's really what you're
Basically,
doing.
and risks from a financial point of view and from a
Yeah.
liability and from a
A
human health point
broad
of view.
series of risks
I
associated.
just want to, when a town acquires a Superfund site, they're afforded liability protections by the federal government to protect them against what I call legacy liability. Anything that happens, if we own the site and we do something on the site, we spill something or make a mistake, that's on us. It's covered by insurance, pollution insurance. But these liability protections for past contamination, if something should be found related, the town will not have any liability related to that. That'll be part of the settlement agreement with EPA and covenants not to sue and things that are pretty clearly stated in EPA documents. And so I would not worry about legacy liability. I'd be concerned with, just making sure that the site is operated properly and cleanly from whoever develops it. Whether we develop it or whether we lease it to somebody, we'd have to have oversight through the permitting process, through the other processes, yeah.
Kathy? We need a microphone, hold on.
Has the select board given any indication or direction to the task force as to their preference for use in terms of commercial, residential, recreational, as part of your views in terms of use recommendations?
Not any official recommendations. You know, I've had conversations with many select board members. Some are interested in recreation, some in revenue generation, some in everything in between. But I don't think the select board has weighed in on that. Although I would assume there's an expectation that there'd be revenue generation from the site. Just as a responsible citizen, I would like to make sure that there's some kind of revenue generation at the site.
So my comment to the committee is that I think that this site, which has been around for a long time, the now imminent prison, and well, those two specifically, the town at the select board level should look at where, as you pointed out, we're in a different place. What is it that are the goals? We've got the MBTA, you know, there's all of these factors going on, and you can't really, you can ask the residents what they would like, but I think that it should come from the select board. So, just my opinion. Want me to put that in writing?
Agree. Anybody else, other questions?
Yeah.
Quasi and then Kathy?
I'm just curious, is there any reason why your recommendation may be not to acquire the site? You know, that's the first question, and the follow-up to that is, if you're highlighting all the risk, you know, and when you're making the recommendation to acquire, are you also tagging a value to it? You know, how much, you know, it should be, you know, it's worth?
I think worth in terms of opportunity, absolute dollar worth. I mean, we'll try to talk about the revenue generation, but if there's intrinsic value and then there's financial value. You know, there's value to the site, and I invite you. We could arrange a site visit. This is a very interesting site. Half of it is a very lovely, rare sphagnum bog, which will connect to the trail systems. There's an open space, and I know Natural Resource Commission is really interested in that part of the site. Nothing will be developed. That's half of the site. Another half of the site where the buildings were, which is being 100,000 cubic yards of soil being removed, and it'll be level. EPA's asked us, how do you want us to grade this site? What are you going to do there? And I said, well, we don't know yet, but grade it flat. And they said, well, we have to plant some trees. Where should we plant the trees? Because they have to restore that part. So it's interesting, and it abuts right on Minuteman Arc. It abuts on
250 trees?
What's that? They'd probably plant more than that. It abuts on Minuteman Arc. It abuts on Black Birch. It abuts on Camp Thoreau, my favorite 40B project. It abuts on the Powder Mills Trail and Thoreau Hills area, so which is like different MCI. I mean, it's a different type of site, and it could be used for different types of things, and MCI could be used for other things. So it might be, at least for the liaison, and we'd love to have a liaison start attending the meetings just to make sure we're not doing anything foolish financially. Not that we would, but I think it would be very, very helpful as we go into the deliberative stage and figure out how to portray all those costs. And you should take a walk through the site at some point.
Okay.
Kathy? I'm sorry. Looking at this, and I'm looking at D.
D, okay. Just a quick question. Is there anyone from the planning board who's involved with your work? The planning committee that we have in town? Do we have a representative who
No,
works
the
on-
representatives weren't selected on the basis of, just thinking who's on there. we have someone in the Board of, who happens to be on the Board of Health, somebody. So our committee members just, do you know who they are?
I know some of them.
So,
Behind you. There's one behind you.
oh, yes. Court's behind us. Pam Hill is an attorney. David Ropeek, who's a risk communicator. Kurt Herman, who's on Board of Health. Gary Kleiman, who wrote Envision Concord and was my co-chair on the reuse committee. Carl Seidman, who's with economic development
There's nobody
issues.
from the planning board, though.
Not the current planning board.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that is they might be you might be able to take value from the work that they do as you're coming up with your plan. And I think it would be helpful to have a town person who, that's their field. No pun intended, but that's, the work that they do.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't know how you could, maybe that's something that we can suggest.
I think
or-
Paul can just go to Linda and,
I think it's a good idea. I mean, Marcia was originally sort of Marcia
Yeah.
Rasmussen was sort of
Yeah.
the champion of the reuse part of that.
Yeah.
And the predecessor, and
But there should-
Andrew Boardman, who's the incoming planning board chair, was on that committee.
Well, there just should be a continuum, from that perspective, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
The other one is, you did mention batteries. So you have been in contact with CMLP about where the battery, if the battery project goes forward, it's going to be at the site?
Well,
no, it can't be there.
No,
no,
We don't even own the site.
no.
We can't put anything there
Oh, I thought that,
No, they want to put it, I think they're going to put it at,
nearby, but not on the site.
nearby.
yeah,
But not on the site.
yeah, no, that's,
We haven't
Oh,
bought the
all
site.
right, okay, all right.
well, I understand this from CMLP, this is a perfect location for battery storage, given its proximity to, where the power is coming into the substation.
But they cannot locate it there.
Not until we figure out what to do.
this is years away still.
Yeah, this is multiple years
We're
away.
buying a battery now, potentially, right?
Okay, so other questions, Lois? I think I'm going to let you be the last word, and then we'll let Paul escape our clutches.
Oh, I was just tooling around the Concord Town website. There was a detailed report done in 2020, right? Or that suggested different uses of the site.
The-
I
the-
remember it being at a presentation on it.
Yeah, the reuse committee, I think
Yeah.
2019 or
Reuse
2021.
So that must be somewhere on the website. and we
Oh,
could
yeah,
all-
it's-
Yeah.
I think that even though the committee no longer exists, I think the committee's listed as the NMI StarMed Reuse Committee, and that report is on that.
Yeah, okay.
On that
Because
site.
that responds to some of the stuff you were saying, Kathy. Just, my recollection of the presentation was that it had a number of different scenarios. It was, preliminary and controversial in some ways, but it examined some of the possibilities in a way that helps you visualize it. So that's worthwhile looking at.
I'm familiar with that report. I do know what you're talking about. But again, my point is, if we as a finance committee are focusing on the revenue aspect for the town, then my recollection of those scenarios were based on what more a consumer decision as to what they would like to see versus a top-down approach of, what are the most pressing needs of the town.
Right.
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
I mean, there were some great options.
Well, one of the reasons why we've spoken to a lot of people on the need side, the departments, is to get that additional perspective on, what do we really need. And can I just say one thing on timing? This is important. So our report is due at the end of this year, and it will advise the select board on what to do next. This site will not be ready for any development until 2028. This site will not be turned over to us, even if we move forward to acquire it, until about 2028, because that's when the cleanup will be completed. That's when EPA will say it's done. Now it can be reused. So we have an extended period of planning for this site and planning and incorporating this site into town planning. There's no urgency, and that's why I can't give you any capital budget here. It's be silly to do that. But within a couple of years, through a planning process, we will develop, a better financial
I mean, I think it
model.
might be safe to say at least $5 to $10 million.
Well, just to give you a preview, I think in the infrastructure, to the ring road and sewer,
Yep.
we've estimated that on several $1 million.
Right,
Like
so
3
minimum
to 4
5 to 10
3 to
is
4
prob-
million just to get the site
Yep.
ready
So,
for
right.
the reuse.
So 5 to 10 million minimum, I think, is fair to start telling people.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't see any more hands raised. Paul, you've been great. Thank you very much for coming, and I'll have Eric, as the incoming chair, have the last word.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and we'll be in touch on how to communicate and collaborate going forward. I think at a minimum it'll be a liaison assignment, although I think it may be appropriate to do something a bit more structured. Sure, site visit makes sense.
Look forward to that.
Minutes for that.
I know. I'll take them while I walk.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Paul, appreciate it. All right, let's go back to our agenda item. I think we had finished discussing in a very timely manner what we were going to try to do to generate revenue. There we go.
Let me go back.
Okay.
Committee year overview.
Any other input on, do we think yellow's fair, or do we want to, or comfortable with yellow, or do we want, yeah, okay. So capital planning and spend, gave it a yellow there. I think we were successful in getting both the town and the schools to come in together with individual plans. I don't think they were as integrated as we would have liked. Certainly, Tier 3 was not exactly on anybody's radar screen, even though we've all heard laundry list of things that will probably come up in the next 5 to 7 to 8 years. We encouraged the reconsideration of the restroom building. Sort of basically, that was the thing. And then, we asked for integrated 5-year plans and we didn't get any. So that's why I gave it a yellow. Anybody agree, disagree?
One other thing I would add to what we did do is we got buy-in from Anthony that we should be considering having Tier 1 capital kind of treated similarly for the schools in the town in terms of how it's presented in the budgets, right? So Tier 1 for, or at least reconsider it and kind of think about, can we do a better job, right? Because, once the schools kind of sits out there on its own in a separate warrant article, and the town is in there.
Yeah, and actually, that's another good point, because I think the other aspect was, after town meeting, you're actually gonna go look at our overall process for trying to see if we can borrow less and save more for $200,000, $300,000 projects. Is that right, Anthony?
Yeah, we have a number of things to attack after town meeting. One is the pilots, and I know that I'm looking forward to bringing a policy proposal to the select board, hopefully in May, on that to get the pilot going. And then what also we were talking about is just a review of our financial policies. And that's where, I want to talk to Kerry and see how we want to do that, whether we do it as a town staff or maybe with a representative of Finance Committee and Select Board. So we need more discussions on that, but certainly I think that'll lend to a better capital plan and a more inclusive and working collaboratively with the school department.
Yeah, and on the financial policies, hopefully have Bob or somebody on his team with you, so it's very clear when we're gonna borrow and when we're gonna try to save to borrow, right? Because we've been spending a lot of money on interest costs, so we probably,
I've certainly been
Don't
spending
need
a lot of
to.
time with the school committee and
okay.
and the school administration, so.
So any other comments on that piece? Otherwise, we'll go to what I thought was probably the best thing we've done, is our communication piece, where thanks to a lot of folks here, right, we communicated to the town. We've got our website revamped. We put out some public presentations that are both on the website. The bridge has been pretty good about following us as well. Carlin?
I would add a yellow to that particular category. And the communication where we're lacking, where I think we kind of fell down, is the communication with the various committees through our liaisons. That is another type of communication that will benefit us because we're the eyes and ears for the committee. And the more that we can communicate with the committee members, whether it's the 2229 Main Street, the Light Board, or the PEG Access Committee, the more we'll know what's going on. So that type of communication, I think, could be enhanced next year, and I would look forward to working on that project with Eric.
There you go.
And I would say, sorry, to maybe improve that, maybe tie the liaison assignments to specific finance committee goals, right? So if we know that revenue generation is a priority, then the 229 Main Street liaison role should be kind of have an eye for that, right? And the updates should be related to that, right? The updates they provide back and forth. So kind of that could keep you a little more focused as a liaison member, because
Yep.
sometimes you're like, what am I?
Yeah,
Why am I here? What am I looking for? You know.
Good point. I'm going to keep this as green because I hear you, Carlin, but the original objective was to residents on this one. It wasn't focused on the inter-committee one, but we'll take notes for next year, right? And this year, on that point, we made a conscious decision to focus liaisons only for 5 or 6 committees versus broadly. So that's something you guys can reconsider next year. If you want to do it more broadly, then do it more broadly, right?
Parshar, you've got regular stories in the bridge in red. Does that mean you think we didn't have
Was this a
enough?
change from the last time I updated it?
Oh, okay.
Right, yeah, thank you for clarifying. Everything in red is just, the last time this got updated was right before the Christmas and New Year's holidays.
I do think we met objectives.
No, we did, and that's why, but I just wanted to highlight what was different than the last time people saw it. So everything in red is a change from the November version.
Can I ask one more thing? To me, it's part of the communications, and I didn't see where it's on your chart. We use the webinar format now for security reasons. I hate it.
Carlin,
I really don't
under
like it.
no circumstances should we be going back.
Well,
To
no,
assert, if there are other technological protections that the town can provide.
Yes.
We should meet with them and talk
Yes,
about it.
and-
But as far as I'm concerned, the webinar format creates a safe space, a safe environment to have these conversations. I would strongly oppose doing anything that weakens those protections.
Okay, I just want to let you know that I was at a PEG Access Committee meeting today where Jason Bulger was talking about some of those technological innovations and training that they're trying to develop, not just for our committee, but for the other town committees, so that you could actually see Peggy's face. I could see Don's face and
we used to
find out
do
what's
that.
going on.
And we used to be able to do that. I was actually surprised the first time I signed on to the new webinar format that we didn't have video for people who'd been promoted to panelists, because we'd always been able to do that, even when we were using a format, whether it was a more secured Zoom format or a webinar format, that provided the kind of protections that we have to have. None of us want to go through that experience again.
Well, I can see that we disagree, because I think it is controllable, but I will defer.
It
to
wasn't
what has this.
controlled. It happened before it happened to us. It's happened in other places. It happened to the Finance Committee, even though the town, respectfully, Anthony, knew that there was a problem. We need to be very careful about that. And I strongly disagree with you. I have been, as you all know, I have to participate remotely sometimes, so I've been on the webinar side of it. It's fine. It really, I don't find it to be a problem, and I'm not hearing complaints from other people. I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable with it. I strongly, profoundly disagree with you.
All right, so we're not going to solve the problem here. We're not going to control it here because we're going to go by whatever the town's technology folks tell us to do. So,
And if the town can offer technology tools that create a little more flexibility but have the basic protections in place,
Right.
then that's great.
yep. CPS, Chris, were you going to say something? Okay. Don and Peggy, if you guys need to talk, you should just speak or raise your hand. I don't know if I think we might be able to see you, but just go ahead and speak up, okay?
Sure, thanks.
Excellent, thank you.
I would just like to say that I am now a a participant, or I got promoted. It was really cool. Anyway, but there is we're on technology that Don and I, being remote, got promoted. So we're not on webinar, we are in the meeting.
Yep. Okay, good, thank you. CPS strategic plan gave ourselves a red for this. We encouraged as much as we could. We were not able to get a five-year plan. I think you guys are going to be ready to do this for the fiscal year 26 process, right? That's what I gathered from some communications that went back and
Yes,
forth.
we are anxiously awaiting the CPS capital facilities update, so we're going to see it shortly, and then we'll give it to you. So
Exactly.
that's in process.
Yep, thank you. Strategic plan, gave it a red because I don't know that the town has made any progress. Is that right?
I would agree with you.
Sorry?
I would agree with you.
Okay.
Can I ask?
Yeah, you can- well, Mary, we need the microphone, sorry.
Thank you for this time. As we're getting into, once town meeting ends, we're going to be talking about goals for the next year. So I'd like to have a little bit of flesh out what exactly you mean by a strategic plan, aside from what we've already written in the Envision Concord plan. So what were you envisioning when you said strategic plan?
So I think the Envision Concord plan is a bit more of a vision, I think.
Yep.
How do we take that and execute it concretely? What are the priorities going to be, competing priorities, and how are we going to fund them? How are we going to take action on them over the next 5 years? What are the specific achievable, realistic objectives we're aiming for year in and year out from the various departments integrated in one plan? So, for example, you've got the rec department, which is part of the town, doing its planning. I don't know that Public Works is integrated. If the rec department wants to spend $4 million and the Public Works says we need $7 million on roads, how does that get integrated? What's the 5-year vision for saying, hey, we're gonna
I think that would be, so your example would be captured in a capital plan.
I understand that, but there's
Right.
operating stuff that happens underneath for which we need money, right?
Right.
You need resources, manpower, or women power, whatever. But the point is pulling that together
I'll tell you
into a roadmap.
what I have in mind for next year would be to look at, and this goes back to what we've been talking about earlier about what do we do 2229 Main and Peabody and MCI, and how do we integrate all that? So I think we need to get a handle on, I'm calling it a municipal land use matrix, because I'm beginning to hate the word
It's more than land use,
plan.
though. That's the thing. I understand
We
that.
have a lot of plans. Okay, we
well,
have plans this high.
I understand,
okay?
but a
Our
strategic
problem is we don't follow the plans that we do.
Oh, but strategic plans,
so-
those shouldn't be that high. That's the point.
Can I finish?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry. I'm
Thank you.
passionate
Thank
about
you.
this.
So I think what I'm envisioning is, again, a municipal land use plan, because what we're doing is we're going into each of these sites and figuring out what do we want to do in isolation, and we can't do that, right? Should DPW be here? Should it be over there? So I'm envisioning a matrix where we have on one dimension, what are all the uses that we have for municipal, and then on the other dimension, what are all of the assets that we have, including things that are going to be coming online, and trying to match those together, what would be the pros and the cons, for example, of putting DPW at 2229 Main? What would be the pros and cons of putting, I don't know, maybe the townhouse at the prison? I'm making this up, right? And then look at, given the pros and the cons, what would be a possibility? I'm thinking of your red, green, and yellow, a strong possibility, proceed with caution, and a no way kind of a thing. So that's what I'm envisioning for that. I'm not envisioning doing a strategic operational plan for several reasons, because again, we already have a lot of plans. And sometimes I find that we get bogged down in making plans as opposed to executing plans. So I just wanted to set the expectation for next year.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I guess and others can voice their thoughts, but if
Yeah,
you're
go
running
ahead.
a
I'm
$30,
open.
$40 million operation,
A what?
if you're running a $30 million operation,
31.
31 million,
Right.
go into 40 or whatever it is. The point is, if the library is going to need 1.7 million extra over the next 3 years, and the police are asking for another 3 million, and somebody's asking for 4 million, how are we prioritizing these over the next 5 years?
Are you talking capital now, or are you talking
No, I'm
operation?
talking operational.
I thought the guideline, but I
Oh,
thought
but
the guideline.
The guidelines don't, the guideline process is year over year, right? And then.
And it's up to the town manager to make sure that she
and I
keeps
think
within
in
that
talking to-
guideline.
In talking to Carrie, she agrees.
That's who we asked about the
She
plan.
agrees we need a plan, a strategic plan for the town.
She needs one
She
for the
needs
town.
one, and she agrees. It just hasn't happened. So this is not, I mean, she doesn't disagree.
Right.
This is just a statement that there's been no progress, period. That's all it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
But no,
she
I
agrees.
sat up here because I want to know, I wanted to set the right expectation as far as how we're going to
Yeah, and I
develop our
think
plans
that's
and
great.
how we manage the town
I
manager.
think the land use piece is great, but in terms of a strategic plan for the town, I think she agrees. I've talked to her about this.
Yep.
She just had a whole bunch of stuff on her plate.
Right, exactly,
That's all.
exactly.
I
So we're
understand.
agreeing about that,
Yeah,
yes.
no, I agree.
Okay,
But I'm just simply saying that no progress was made.
right.
This is not a
You're right, and
disparagement of
the reason I
anything.
sat down was to think about going forward, what's realistic to expect next year. That's the only reason I sat down.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Any other thoughts? Nope. Middle school building project, I think we received updates from Suresh and Chris periodically, so I think that was good. We're still under
Green,
budget.
they better be green.
They're green.
Okay.
It was
It is
great. I
green.
just flipped the slide.
Red, we just talked about this. While Kathy's gone to a few meetings and stuff, we probably should have been more proactive. As I told Kathy earlier this afternoon, I didn't prompt either. Maybe send a letter, we'll have Pauline come in a little bit more, hear our sense. So that's why I gave it a red.
Yeah,
This one we have-
I can value,
We have the next 6 months, hopefully, too.
right, and I can value your opinion on that. I did not see any need to deliver them a report as the liaison. So I didn't know you were looking for a written report.
Fair enough.
We can do that.
Do we want to change it to yellow? I don't know that it's green, but again, these are drafts, so if folks aren't comfortable with these colors and thoughts, we can change them.
I think you should
Yellow.
change it to yellow.
Yellow.
Okay. I'm just making a note here, so we'll do that in the final version.
Yeah.
The rec plan I put down as red. I don't know that we really did anything per se.
Assign me as the liaison to the Recreation
know.
Commission. I've
But-
reported on what's been going on.
Fair enough.
And the last part, the one thing we have accomplished on that
Yep.
is that we've gotten a commitment from CPC to
Yep.
take into consideration the recreation strategic plan when they make their recreation allocations. That's not saying that they're going to follow them, but at least say, okay, is this within the recreation's
Right.
strategic plan? Now, whether that strategic plan has a whole lot of merit, I'm still not convinced. But at least we've had some impact on that.
Yep.
So I'd appreciate we change that red to a yellow, if that's
Well,
possible.
fair enough, and the reason is I
I
looked,
think it should be green.
well, hold on a second. I mean, look, if we're gonna look at this objective, those are the three things that we said were our deliverables. So again, we shouldn't be taking any of this personally. We said as a committee that we would do these three things. I don't know that, so we understand the budget impact of the strategy. I don't know that we do or not. Hold that thought, Dee. We did not, I don't know that the town capital incorporated potential capital projects out of the rec plan. I don't think it does, right? And then we also said we'd incorporate these impacts into 5-year forecasts, and we didn't. And again, we shouldn't take these personally. We set about for those objectives. That's what I was measuring ourselves on.
We do have the 5-year plan for the enterprise portion of the Beatty Center, which is part of that recreation department's purview, if you want to think about it that way. I don't know. But it's
They're not incorporated into our forecast. So for example, right, Carlin, if the rec strategy has talked about, we're gonna spend $3 million here, and it's gonna come out of the town and not the enterprise, those aren't in the 5-year forecasts. That's all these were. So let's not take any of this personally, because it's we, the finance committee. Now, maybe we shouldn't have agreed to those objectives in the beginning, and next year we could have a different set of objectives.
We
Sorry?
thought that when we started this, we thought we'd have the recreation strategic plan would have budget
Yeah.
numbers in it. They have dollar sign, double dollar sign, or triple dollar sign. That's it.
Yeah, so
We don't need to
that's
know it.
why. So again, if folks want to change it to yellow, I'm happy to do it, but this was not a grade on individual liaisons or anything else. That's where I was coming from when I saw that. So happy to change it to whatever folks would like. Dee?
Yeah, I think the color should be yellow and then the other one should be green. But what I was going to talk about is, I don't know now. No, what I wanted to talk about is, we have these liaisons, and I think we need to rethink the role of a liaison, and Eric is, over there agreeing with me. Like, what is the expectation? Should they be a specialist? Should they be writing every month? Should they submit a short report on what they've uncovered? So I think that that would be one of the first things that we could be taking up next year, next fiscal year, in terms of that role. I think that would be helpful to every liaison, and also we have a whole, we can have confetti throwing up in the air about the types of liaisons we want to have.
So, Eric and Dee, so last year when we sort of revamped the organizational structure, I did in fact prepare a grid that has the definition of the roles, so I can make sure that you have that. So we did go back and look at what does a liaison do and what don't they do. So we have something to start with anyway.
Well, and we did it, I think we did it in this summer for this committee.
Yeah.
Actually, and if you recall, we changed the description on our website. So that was just this past May
So we
or
have
June,
that up
right?
there? Oh, okay,
So
good.
that's there.
Good.
Again, you guys can take a look at it and revamp it for next year, and I'll put that down. All right, I've already put that down, review expectations of liaisons.
Yep.
But we went through that exercise.
Chris, you
And
can
I-
send me yours.
Sure, I think it's probably the same thing.
It's
I'm
the
happy to
same
send it
thing,
to you.
because go ahead.
Sure.
And I think what we're doing now, this exercise is important retrospectively, so we're honest with ourselves and we're honest with the taxpayers on how we did against our goals for last year, but it's also helpful prospectively, because we're thinking about goals. I'm thinking about our goals for next year, I'm thinking about our calendar, and I'm also thinking about liaison roles. This is a really important input for our goals and our liaison role. I won't even call them assignments, because we may reimagine the whole thing.
Yeah. So 250th anniversary celebration, I gave ourselves a yellow. I know we talked to them a couple times during the course of the year, encouraging them not to come to us as much as possible. They still, is it 750 or what did it finally come down to? I forgot the number.
Another 350
Sorry,
this year. I
another
think, yeah.
350. I think we did send them a letter on September 7th. And after that, I don't know that we did. And we
I think
didn't.
they've come to see us.
Yeah,
so,
they've come to see
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
but we didn't, again, the yellow, we didn't estimate the impact of the taxpayers, right? So again, just trying to objectively, this is what we said we would do.
Yep.
We got some of it done, didn't get other parts done.
It's not on the bar chart?
Sorry?
It's not on the bar chart?
It is on the bar chart.
Because there's a 350.
It is a bar chart, but I didn't feel like we did a whole lot of work. It did, and that's why I gave it a yellow. I don't feel comfortable giving it a green, because like, they still ask for money.
But they also went and got state and
Yeah,
federal
no,
funds.
I-
So, I mean, I think you did a good job.
Well, we did a good job, but if we want to make it a green, we can make it a green. I'm a hard grader.
I think yellow's fine.
I'm with you. I'm a tough grader. Sorry?
I mean,
Okay, we move on. I think is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah.
Okay. The union contracts, we set out to do a number of things, but ultimately, we decided not to do any of them for good reason, which is why I gave ourselves a green. Because if we had proceeded along these lines, we could have endangered the contracts because of bad faith negotiations and stuff. So I give ourselves a little bit of a pass on that one. You're going to reveal the numbers now?
No. I just want to say it's been great having Anthony in the room. Anthony's been in the room for CPS and CCHS. We spent like 4 hours together today. And Ryan from Carlisle is in the room at the Region, so it's actually been really great.
Good. improve the guideline process. I didn't give this a color because I wanted to get Lindsay and Lois's opinion on how you guys would grade ourselves. I did, and the rest of the committee, right? The objective was you guys are going to review the process and give additional time. I don't know how you guys all felt, how the committee felt about that, so
Well, it was,
I left it white and then we could fill in the color.
we weren't able to do a preliminary guideline. We had to go right to final. And we had reasons for not doing that were external to the committee, but we still didn't fully follow our own procedures.
The timeline is so tricky because everything's so compressed, right? We
Yeah.
have to act before we have full information, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we kind of did what we could. I don't know how this could get better if other timelines don't change.
Yeah,
I think what would happen
Hold
is if.
on, Lois, were you going to say
No,
more?
I think,
She may not be
I
finished.
think our procedure, the procedure we used, I think, was good and better than it had been from some of my prior years on the committee. Because we, updating what we used as the baseline, using available federally generated figures, and that process I thought went well. And the decision to set a number rather than a range, I think all of that made sense. And I think we did a better job than has been done in past years of explaining our process. Maybe that ties back into the communications piece of it, where we communicated clearly with the town about why we weren't doing a preliminary, but what our current thinking was and what the metrics were that we were using. And I think we were very clear in communicating what our final decision was and how we made it. So in that sense, we did pretty well, but it wasn't an unflawed process, and there's always room for improvement.
Well, what do you suggest for
Hold on,
improvement?
Carlin was going to say something.
I have to give some praise here, so hold on. Lindsay, you and Lois did a really good job running that spreadsheet. I know that several times I'd ask questions about, well, I sent it to both of you, and you came back with different permutations of, okay, what if we have changed this factor, and you were able to get that back to me. I really did appreciate that because it helped me understand all the work that you two in particular went through to get that spreadsheet put together. I did have one concern about it, and that was the output of the cost of living adjustment being 2.3%, which I thought, based on my personal research, that it was unrealistically low.
Felt low.
And my concern about this is if you have an input that is not realistic, then your output may not be totally realistic, or at least can be suspect.
Right.
And that was one concern. The other concern that I think would help our process is if we have what I'm calling a last look, that is just before town meeting, at a meeting like this, or maybe even sooner than that we look again at whatever we've made a no action recommendation on and say, okay, it's been since December, whatever it was, we had our last vote, have things changed? We haven't done that in this process. We haven't had that. And for that reason, since we haven't had that last look, I'd sent to Parshar and to Eric a request that we have at least a discussion about our Article 20 vote in particular, of whether or not we still think anything has changed, whether since the last time when we issued the guidelines in December, since we had the vote March 28th. Some things came to light just Monday afternoon at the school committee meeting that I think may have an impact on it. But because we don't have this last look, this last chance, we're not going to be able to talk about that. And I really would appreciate if it is at all possible that we do have a discussion about whether we want to have another consideration of Article 20.
Thank you. Dee?
I think enough's been said.
Yeah, no, I keep going. Oh, okay. Any other comments on the guidelines? So what color would we
Leave it
assign?
white, they were stellar.
Make it yellow.
Then I've got to add a little box explanation for what white is.
Really, and they did
we
such
should
a
make it-
job.
I think it should be yellow. I think
Yellow?
we can
Yeah,
always-
we can always improve.
Okay.
I think it should be green, really.
I thought it was perfect. I thought it was fine. I just want to hear from the rest of the committee. I mean,
How many want green?
I'll raise my hand. I thought it was, you guys did a good job with the numbers and everything else, right? And the communication, I thought, was stellar. Any objections?
Really, the communication was excellent.
Okay, I don't hear any
I'd
objections.
still give it a yellow.
Okay. Improve the annual report.
Okay. Now, in my
Can I
defense,
just say my piece for a minute? Can I just say my piece for a minute?
I don't know.
And again, keep in mind, this is a we, right? This is not a, yeah, it really is. It really is.
Go ahead, have your.
I told Kathy as
short.
well. So the one deliverable was we said we'd show the total impact of articles on taxes. And I think we did that in that waterfall chart before the public hearings. I don't think we actually did it in the town report, did we?
Yes.
Oh, where is it?
In a sneaky way.
Okay, well, show me. I missed it then. Tell me.
Okay.
Happy to change it to green if we did.
Page 10, at the bottom of, okay, so we had this discussion about property taxes anyway.
Yeah.
And so at the bottom of page 10, if you read the note,
Yeah.
at town meeting, a handout on the
Ah.
table that estimates the impact of town meeting spending decisions on your tax bill will be available. That same, also, page 21, under appendices.
Okay.
Where it has handout. On town meeting, it has estimated impact of town meeting.
So this is great.
spending
So
on your
what
ta- So let me finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, the objective was an individual who goes to town meeting can make their own assessment. When a decision is made on an article, they can say the impact is X, they can add it to theirs. So this way, it will be an individual, not a collective number.
Yeah, no, I
A
agree.
number that represents a collective.
Completely, the only reason I give it a yellow is and I'm gonna go to the arbiter, because this is Don's idea. So I was just expecting, no, he didn't give it a yellow, I gave it the yellow, don't blame him for that. I was just expecting a little chart in here, but your point is fair. So, Don, do you think I'm happy to change to green, because I didn't see that. I did not consider that little thing there, but that's what we wanted, right?
Well, that's,
So
and you got it.
And we're gonna get it,
just
so
in a
that's fine,
different
that's fine,
format.
fair enough.
We haven't seen it. Where, I mean, I.
It's going to be on the tables at town meeting.
Okay, so, and the committee's not going to see it in advance?
Maybe you have some copies in your office or something? I don't know when the
Is it
copies
already
are going to
done?
be made. It's the
It's-
one, that was the chart that had been distributed before.
Yeah, we made the copies. I
Is
think
it the
Laurie
water-
made
Just send us the electronic copy,
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
right? The
What?
final electronic
We
copy.
can have Laurie.
Do we have the
Do
final
we have a final
electronic?
electronic copy?
No, I had a paper copy.
Who did
Who has the
it?
final electronic?
I don't know,
copy?
there was, and I went back through all the notes from before, and I found it at some meeting, but it wasn't.
It was a
We
one-page
can
slide?
scan a copy and
Sorry?
forward it. We can scan a copy and
Thank
forward
you.
it to
Thank you.
the committee.
Okay, so we'll change that to green. I was looking for a chart, but your point is fair. Okay. And then the benefit spending, we really didn't do anything. I know that we talked a couple times, but we really didn't.
The benefit spending?
So right now, remember the joint accounts on the benefits includes both the school and the town,
Right,
right? And folks lose sight of the fact that
that's right.
total town spending and total school spending, you gotta go in there and divvy it up, and we can't do that except manually, and it's a lot of work for the town to do that. So they've been talking about trying to separate them, and it just hasn't happened. So, a red. So I've took some notes, I'll share them with Eric, we'll circulate them, and we'll change the colors that we talked about, and that's that.
I have two other points, just from thinking through the process. Minuteman. So I think for next year, you need to pay attention to the Minuteman costs, Eric, and what's going on there. That number, having perhaps a closer relationship with Steve Ledoux, our board rep there, rather than just coming in right before the meeting to say, yeah, you're up, X%, whatever it is, right? I think we should know sooner what's going on there. A lot's moving around there, and it's a lot of dough. So I would pay attention to that, number one. Number two is the knowledge of the numbers. So you now have a good knowledge of the numbers. More than one person needs to really understand how the numbers come together, and I'm not kidding. So someone who's good with understanding how the financials work, how that guidelines model works, somebody's gotta get into it besides Lindsay. You need at least two players who can check each other on those models. They can be wrong. The $500,000 allocation issue we talked about earlier, that was a mess up on the guidelines allocation, right? So somebody got it wrong. So you have turnover in personnel. We lose institutional knowledge as people move on. Somebody's got to know how all those models really work and they come together.
Who's your vice chair for?
Ozzy.
Oh,
Finance professor, so I think we're going to be fine.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I feel confident that it'll come out.
Good, just make sure.
High level of confidence.
If not, we'll call you.
I already know it. Somebody else
Did you
needs
see
to
what
know.
sounds like? Unfortunately, we don't hear those anymore.
All right.
And so actually, that raises a good point. Are there any other big picture, look back and here's some things to keep in mind for next year's committee we want to raise aside from what was or wasn't on that, on our plan?
Actually, I want to jump back for a second, but it relates to what you're saying. Dee, this really came out great.
You liked it?
Yeah, I think you achieved brevity by, I love the idea of taking some of the stuff that we had fully reproduced and putting links, putting URLs there so that the glossary is still available, the levy limit explanations are still available, but you don't have to pay to print them. I think there were a lot of the decisions you made that made it shorter that were good. And make it more manageable for people. So I really do like the report.
Thank you. That said.
This is just a little nit. It would have been great to have a little more input at earlier stages in the drafting. Because for those of us that were reading it and making comments, it came with really short turnarounds. So it would have been great to build a little more time into the process, but I wasn't in the room with you guys, I don't know where you were. The process in prior years may have been a little more forgiving. We may have had a little more time to turn drafts and get input from people. That's my only criticism, and we all just did it. And when you got it to us late on a Friday and said you needed comments by Sunday, you got them. But that's my only criticism, and it's basically a nit, because the output, I think you did a great job. And I think it reflects really well on the committee, so thank you.
I think thank you for saying that. The objective was to save money and to shorten it, but I think that if you hear any feedback that people are like, well, what happened, why didn't we have this or that, or why wasn't it in color, or things like that, that's good feedback for next year. Yep. For the people to consider.
So I got 2 pieces of correspondence that liked the report. So I think the fact that it was brief was good.
And I received good feedback as well from neighbors.
Did you?
Yeah, I didn't think they really read it, but but I think the fact that it's shorter.
He quizzed them on it after they.
The fact that it's shorter, I think they're really reading it. That
Yeah.
they picked up the phone and called me and said, "Hey, well, we saw it," which was nice to hear.
If they have any questions, just keep them to yourself.
So you're going to say something, but I want to go back to what Chris said about the 2 people that know the numbers, and Anthony and I have talked about this. I think Anthony's re-looking at the models that we use so that they're a little bit more internally consistent with one another.
Yep.
Right? Because the previous models, they've been built up over time.
Yep.
And all the tabs go back to like 20 years. And probably makes sense. I know we and Dee was in the room when Liz and I and Anthony were trying to square circles and stuff, and it was a bear.
Yep, it is.
And so they're going to take a look at it, and I would encourage Anthony, you to bring in Lindsay and Quasi early on so that they understand what those I'm not gonna say models, it'll be one integrated, internally consistent model looks like, that will have both guideline capability and impact on taxes, and a way to line up what's in guideline spending, what's not in guideline spending. And at the end of the day, like, what is the total amount of money the town spends? I mean, just getting to that number was a bit of a chore this time. So Anthony's gonna be on the case on that one.
One area where I think we had a huge improvement, and this flew under the radar, but it really matters, is the packets. I think the packets
the
now
packets
are
are much
so
better,
well
much better, much
organized, the
better.
way the
Yeah.
the way they're divided.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
Yeah.
So that was great.
The packets are much more usable, much more accessible. It's a real improvement, Anthony, thank you.
You're welcome.
And on that point, you came in with a bang and cleaned up the minutes from the previous year, right? And kept us on task for the minutes this year. So thank you for that as well. That went much better too.
Good luck, Don.
But she'll be on the committee to help you out, Don.
No, we have a vice one over here, right? Carlin is right there.
Okay.
I'm gonna sit back.
Any other broad comments, themes, et cetera?
I'd say one more thing that would be great to work with you on is kind of.
Work with who?
Work with, work with, I guess, the whole committee.
There you go.
Is really collecting institutional knowledge a little bit better and figuring out how to pass things along in a more systematic way.
All right.
How do we go about doing that?
I think that could be a good topic for some of our first meetings, right, of the new year, right?
So, and I'll close, Tracy and Mary are up here if you guys want to come up. And I know that there's going to be additional conversations, right? From a communication perspective with the school committees, lots of bumps. We could all improve. Tracy and I have had a couple conversations in Alexa. And I'm sure Eric will as well. And Mary, from your perspective, how did it go? Would also be useful, just 5-10 months. What could have been better and what should next year's committee do to improve? 5 minutes, Tracy, not 50. I know, there's a lot. But it's helpful to hear,
Are you coming
right?
up too?
No, I'm gonna wait.
You're gonna wait. No, I think for the most part, it was pretty good. I agree with what Carlin said, is that last look. I think that would be helpful on the regional budget in particular. We didn't have a preliminary guideline this year, so that was different. And it just felt like, here's our number, and that's it. And I think if we can just open up the communication a little bit more, I think that would be helpful. Dee has been a great liaison to the school committee, so I thank you for that. Victor and I work a lot with Victor and Carlisle, and I think the liaison role is hugely important. We struggle with it as a school committee. We struggle with how to use your liaisons, what's the most effective way. Do you just sit in a meeting? Do you report out at the meeting? And when we do reports at our meetings, sometimes the liaisons, it can take 20 minutes. And it's not really essential to the business of the schools. I'll come to this meeting, it's great, but if it's not about the schools, then it really isn't that pertinent. So we struggle. I think all the committees struggle with the same thing. The institutional knowledge that you talked about, we built a Google Drive for the school committee over the past 2 years. Super helpful. I would just put that in your, bag of tricks. Just because it really is a steep learning curve for new members when they come on as to, what's the role, what do you do, where do I find all the budget information? So I think more improved communication would be helpful, and just more of this, collaborating with others. And I think that we can do it. And I think it's possible. I think we're so close. I look at the budgets like we are really close, and we are really trying hard. I just want to impress upon you that we are really trying hard to meet that guideline. And I know we didn't do it at the region. We did it at CPS, and, we gave a couple, the amenities building, I heard you. We pulled it. The CPS capital budget, we pulled that back this year and last year. I don't know what's going to happen once we get the facilities report. I'll just say that. I think the intention is now we'll have a full picture. But we definitely want to work with the Finance Committee and the Select Board, so.
And I appreciate that. And the reason we didn't have preliminary guidelines is because neither the school nor the town were ready with the numbers. So it is what it is, right? That's
Yeah.
why we weren't able to deliver them.
Yeah.
The previous years, we were able to, last year or 2 years ago was the first time we did the 5-year numbers. They came in on time and we had the preliminary guidelines for you guys.
And we did.
This year, we didn't have the
I thought
numbers.
through the metrics process. And the guideline ended up as the highest number in the metrics. So there was sort of, and so there were 2 letters, one explaining why we weren't able to do the preliminary guidelines, which was unfortunate, but it explained that we didn't
Yeah.
have the data. But that first communication said specifically the highest number we've identified in the metrics was, I think, 3.3, and that's where we ended up.
Yeah.
So you had notice, you had
Yeah.
a context to work against. Hopefully next year the timing will work out better and, things will align and you'll have more specific information going in. But I don't think you were going blind. We did try
No.
to inform you as much as
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, schools are kind of, they're different. Kids are different, our special ed costs are different. Like, there are a lot of things that we have no control over that are mandated. Special ed being one of them, special ed transportation, the homeless shelter coming in. We're not, that money's coming in and out, so that's a little bit different. Our electoral costs were way up this year. There are some things that are way out of our control.
There's help coming on that front.
The what?
There's help coming on that front.
No. But it's like there are a lot of things that are mandates that are beyond our control, and we can't always just cut FTEs because we have to give to special ed, so let's cut from regular ed. We never want to do that either. So we are really advocating for tight budgets, and they are tight. And just the one piece that Parashar and I discussed maybe last week was the budgets right now, we're in a freeze at the school district, just so you all know that. So there is no more spending before the end of the year. We are literally at a freeze. So if anything needs to be spent, it's got to go through the principals, and then it's got to go to Lori and Bob. So we are super tight for the rest of the year, and that's just our reality right now.
Is it the region or is it?
Both. Both.
Okay.
It's at both. And we talked a lot about that the other night. So it's not as though, we're skipping around with all this money. We really aren't. It is tight this year. And, we have pressures, and our budget is tight for next year. We took some risks. And, we're going to see what happens. We only have 3 retirees at the region this year. Sometimes it's 5, and that has a significant impact because all those teachers are at the top of the salary scale. And you and I talked a lot about that last year. Yeah, and so my example last year with Dee is to get to the top of the salary scale. If you were a teacher and you start teaching here at 23 years old, and to get to step 17, you're 40. So you're not close to retirement. You could have 20, 25 years at the top of that scale. You're getting the top of longevity, and so and at the region, we have over 60% of our teachers at that top step.
Okay.
So
let's not get into the content, but thank you for.
No, but that's just.
I have a question.
Oh, hold on, let me ask you a question. Is it related to process and overall feedback? Because I don't want to get into content around budget items and stuff, because it's not on the agenda, and frankly, this topic is on feedback.
This is feedback.
Okay, then go ahead.
I'm curious as to whether we should have a quarterly meeting with the schools, just to, rather than just at the end of the year and everybody's like this.
Yeah. I feel like that summer meeting we had was excellent. We started the summer off. I would love to do, I can't speak for the rest of the committee, but starting in the summer and maybe with a little bit more frequency. I don't know, or more casual meetings sometimes are helpful too with, portions, like whether it's vice chair, chair, whether it's guidelines, I think that would be helpful.
So who needs to initiate that? Is it just a lack of communication? Do we set up meetings on a quarterly basis? Do maybe we don't have to have answers tonight, but just moving forward, how can we build a better relationship?
Yeah.
Between the town and the schools and.
Yeah, and I think we actually do have a good relationship, but I think that, like, sometimes the narrative out there is it's town versus school, you know? I don't love that narrative. Like, let's just,
I don't think anybody likes it.
nobody likes that, you know?
We don't need to
Yeah,
have it, so
yeah.
how do we get around that?
I don't know. I think more meetings, more like liaison connections with people, more face-to-face. I don't know. I don't like the sides, like when we like to have FinCom on one side and school committee on the other side. That never
Well,
feels
look,
great at a
I said-
table.
As I said the other day, reasonable people can disagree on
Yeah.
items. I don't take it personally. Nobody should take it personally. And we'll agree on some things. We agreed on the fact that you guys reconsider the restroom building, for example.
Yeah.
So, you know, we just move on. So, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then maybe you guys can give feedback on each other. Just joking, just joking.
Thank you. As you know, the Finance Committee is an advisory group to the Select Board, and we really do take your advice seriously. As you know, we've actually delayed making our recommendations on some of the articles to hear your recommendations. So, like, for example, tonight on Article 1. So we take your advice very seriously. And I think it would be very helpful to us if you followed Carlin's suggestion and beefed up your liaison assignments, because we often find ourselves in the room saying things that I think we're getting advice from you and trying to advance what you know you're telling us you want, and we're a lone voice. So if the more people we can have in those committees, like the planning board, that would be wonderful. This year, I want to really thank you for the fact that when it came down time for the guideline, the fact that the guideline, instead of being based on opinions, which we all had when I was on the Finance Committee, it was really based on data. And that was a huge benefit to me as far as feeling confident that this was a realistic guideline and that we should be able to live within it. So I want to thank you for that. Our role is also to look at the town's budget. We manage the town's, where we help the town manager develop the budget. And I just want to make a point while I have the mic that meeting the guideline is difficult for the town. We don't do it in public, but it is very difficult. And for example, in 25, we're going to have MCI, which is a brand new thing, and it requires a lot of town effort, and we've got to somehow absorb that within our budget. We've got the 250th committee, which again is a huge effort, which is requiring a lot of town services. And so, you know, these are things that we're absorbing, the town is absorbing, the town manager is absorbing in their budget, and still meeting guidelines. So I just have to put that out there, and so that you understand that. Because again, like I said, we don't do this publicly. Okay, the town takes the guideline and meets it. So, thank you for everything you do. We really take your advice seriously. The more you can do to help us in the meetings and see a FinCom person in the meeting with us is, you know, makes our job more easier. But we're not the legislation, right? None of us here are legislators, right? Right? It's town meetings. So if we, you know, I think the select board so far wants to go in hand with the Finance Committee, so.
Good, thank you. All right, thank you, guys. Shall we go to the correspondence? Is that next?
Sure.
And then we have minutes, but we can't vote on them because they're not on the agenda.
There's two that are on the agenda.
Oh, we
There's
can vote
one
on,
that-
okay, so can we put the agenda up?
Yeah.
I don't know that there's anything to discuss per se on the correspondence. It was there as fact, I think, for the record more than anything else, but let's go there. You thought we can get by on the year-end review in 20 minutes, did you?
Try, yeah.
No, hopefully.
Just don't listen to my suggestions, Josh.
Sorry?
You don't listen to my suggestions. Speed it up.
Listen to the finance director next, we'll put that down as a recommendation.
Oh, I think Eric's got that, right, Eric? You know how to speed up a meeting.
So with regards to the minutes, there are two sets
Oh,
of
I'm sorry,
minutes.
correspondence, was I correct? It was there for FYI only?
Right. there
There's
was
no
two-
action needed.
Two letters in there, one from Superintendent Hunter.
And then our response back.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
So under the minutes, there are two sets of minutes. And what I would like is, we didn't have a lot of time ahead of time in order for you to look at these and make your comments. So if you could get comments back to me by Monday, email them, and we will then I will make any corrections, and they will appear in next month's minutes. After which, then, it will be Don who handles all of that.
Who's taking minutes next week if necessary?
At the meeting?
You know, I will take them because it's still the year. And the only minutes I have to take is if we have.
If we
If we meet.
We have a meeting
Okay.
ourselves.
Oh, wait, do we have to?
Last year, we had one.
We did.
We did.
One,
Yeah,
yeah,
in
and
that
that's
capacity.
exactly what I did as clerk. I just took the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Do-
circulated them right afterwards.
We don't have to post, right? Do we have to
We do.
post?
We do.
Post it for all
Okay.
3 days, and if you post it for half an hour before town meeting starts, and we
Okay.
have a room.
We have
just
a
in
room,
case,
okay.
yeah.
No, hold on. We have a room there?
Yeah, if you want, if you have something you need to talk about, that's very common.
Well,
Yeah.
so the room, the doors have to be open,
Yeah,
right?
because last year.
I got a little slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
Right, so the select board's in room 241, we're in room 242 if needed.
Okay,
Other than that,
okay.
it's
So
the select
you
board.
you need to tell us whether we need to be there
Yeah,
or
well,
not.
we'll all be at the table.
Well, no, you need
No,
to tell
this is
us ahead of
before the
time
meeting,
if we-
Parashar. So this is if there's something that comes
Oh,
up.
sure, if something
Yeah,
comes
yeah, yeah,
up, sure.
yeah,
But if
yeah.
something comes up during the meeting, we're all.
No, then you're
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
right. But
right.
this is specifically if you
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
vote on something
Yeah,
before we
yeah,
go
if
downstairs.
something comes up, that's
For
fine.
Monday, we're supposed to just go directly to the table out front.
Unless
Of everybody?
Parashar has told us.
Unless
that
he tells us we're
Unless
coming
you get an
early.
email
half
from
an
me,
hour before.
then just be at the,
So go to the
at the table out
registration
front.
desk, register. and
Bring
then go
plenty
to
of coffee and candy. Emphasis on the candy part.
And it's 2:42?
242 is what he said.
242, and that's if
Bring
needed,
your almond
though.
Easter
Other than
candy.
that,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
And no spiking the coffee, by the way. Sorry? It might be.
Could. Oh, did it?
Oh, okay, well then,
Business taken up after 10.
No new business after
10.
okay.
I'm gonna have to create.
Minutes we just did, and I think we're done.
I move, we adjourn.
So moved.
It's so good to see you.
He
Unfortunately,
has a hand raised.
neither,
Peggy
who
has
had a hand raise?
Peggy?
Peggy?
Peggy, are you still there?
She is.
I'm here. I believe it or not, I'm driving. I'm on the road. But I communicated with Carmen today, and she is hoping that on the first night, we'll get through Article 22. I looked at it, and I thought it was pretty optimistic, but for planning perspective, that's what I have to report.
Okay.
Okay, and
we'll see
one
what
other thing,
happens.
so in terms of presentations that we're making, can you just speak to that for a
Oh,
minute?
right. So, and actually, we did not circulate the presentations. We will do that right afterwards. So just like last year, I've got 6 or 7 slides around basically summarizing our report, basically. And then,
And where is that? What time of the meeting is
well,
that?
that will be at the beginning of the meeting, but I'm going to try, somebody gave me feedback, I don't know who. It was you, that basically lots of people were milling around, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to see if I can sweet talk Carmen into giving us a bit of a delay.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good,
and also, a lot of people haven't come yet.
Yeah.
Because last year, when we did the presentation on the report, the room wasn't particularly full,
Yeah.
and then people started arriving later when they get closer to when some of the meaty articles are gonna be proposed.
Yeah, so actually, that's a good point. Let me just reach out to
So she can
Carmen
move you
as we
back
talk.
and, maybe Article
One of the things that just sort of
4, any of the
completely
the
slipped my
substantive
mind.
articles, but after the initial milling.
right.
And
So-
don't forget the first night includes a lot of intro and recognitions
Where
and
the bathrooms are.
Yeah.
stuff like that before things really get underway.
So in terms of what we think is controversial, so stormwater, I presume, might be
So can I just
controversial?
interrupt here?
Yes, sure.
I don't know that this is on the agenda, so
Okay.
I'm just, are you doing this for planning purposes?
I'm just doing it prep for a town meeting, so that's all I want to make sure that we're in sync about what we know. Sometimes we get to speak on things, and so I just want to make sure if we're going to do that, we talk about it.
As far as I know, the only things we're actually speaking on are Article 20 and the opening,
Okay.
right? So we've got our report and recommendations, and if somebody from the floor asks,
Right.
why we did one thing or the other. We can just sort of, I can go up there or ask somebody else, whoever worked on it, and just say, can you go up and give our recommendation? I see Carlin and I see Mary. Mary, you have to come up here, so, folks, I'm sorry.
What about Article 40, item number F, the 250 trees? We've been getting a lot of press about how the FinCom has had no action on that particular one.
Yep.
I think we should have somebody ready to speak on that particular thing, and I think it should be Chris.
There you go.
Happy to.
Okay, let's, yeah, go ahead. And then,
They did have I wasn't at the meeting, but there was a meeting to really allocate how much time per, and who was going to speak per article.
Okay.
What you can do, and I know you've done this before, is that you can let the moderator know when she introduces each article where the FinCom stands. Right? She mentions the Finance Committee, right? Right? As far as getting time to speak, you better move fast on that, because that's been nailed down already.
sorry?
She knows.
Do you have time? Do you have?
Presentation?
I thought you said the only time but if you want to get on for CPC, which is what you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Adding something.
The 250 trees.
Or if you,
I don't-
I
we
think
can
we're
just
saying
stand
only
up.
speak if asked to speak.
Oh, okay. Oh,
It's not a form of.
are you?
Well, how do
Are you? I don't know what you're saying.
I don't care.
You feel
I
comfortable
didn't,
going up to the microphone?
Sure.
Okay, because that solves the problem.
From the floor?
yeah, I can if you want. Can I?
I don't, it's not up to me.
I can speak from the committee there. I don't think it's a big,
It's not a big deal. I just,
there was one letter in two. I only saw one.
And there's nothing else.
Chris is.
You can always speak,
comfortable.
you can
Let's
always
just-
speak
okay.
from the floor.
Let's.
You can always
I
speak
think
from the
we're
floor, because you're a
making-
citizen, right?
making
And you
a
can
lot of
speak from the floor. But if you want the podium at the front of town meeting. okay,
I don't,
I don't think we need it.
I don't.
Okay,
speak from the
then
We're making them out
no
of
problem.
molehill. If somebody asks, she can go to the podium because she's going to speak
That's
as a
right.
member of the FinCom and say what she wants. But I don't think we're actively going there to
Right.
oppose it.
Not
That was
advocate
not.
our position,
Yeah.
right.
And that's why, by the way, we don't even have a motion to amend it, right? We never made a motion to amend it.
We didn't.
You know, I'm just wondering if Parashar, if you could talk with Carmen about having, because the comment was made, having the FinCom recommendation stated when she starts the article, when she introduces the article.
I don't think that's necessary. I don't think that's necessary.
So let's do this. Let's adjourn, and then we can talk about this one-on-one, but this is, we're just getting down into,
So I'm going to renew my motion to adjourn.
thank you.
Oh, second.
Okay, we need a roll call because we're hybrid. Unfortunately.
I don't think you need.
To adjourn, you can adjourn.
Oh, I can adjourn even though we're hybrid? Meeting is adjourned.
Excellent.
I learned this a year
Hard to
later.
remember these things.
Did you get?